Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal. See playlist for other chapters and novels. Join now our Telegram channel now and enjoy exclusive early access. t.me/blood_immortal_official. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 201. Even yours truly is embarrassed to flaunt. Chapter 201. Even yours truly is embarrassed to flaunt. But when the crowd looked over, all of them frowned. Was this guy for real? These were disciples of a sect, not to be trifled with. And he, on the other hand, his appearance was downright outrageous. A bowl of piping hot soybean milk in one hand, a thick, long, deep-fried oil fritter in the other. Lin Fan had not expected to find such delicacies within the Xuanwang world as well. Licking and smacking his lips, he was drowned in reminiscence. When Gong Bingye looked over at who it was, her heart thumped furiously. It was as though the little raisins on her chest started trembling as well. She had not expected the mysterious man to appear here. Was he here to help her out? Lu Yiyuan frowned. Was this guy courting death for disregarding him? He then tossed a look over at Wang Hao. Wang Hao nodded, stepping forth with a look of arrogance. What? Scram aside. Lin Fan's eyelids twitched as he sidestepped Wang Hao, entirely disregarding the latter's existence, and walked forth in between Gong Bingye and Lu Yiyuan. Taking yet another mouthful of soybean milk, he could feel his tummy getting full. He then handed the bowl over to Gong Bingye. Have you had breakfast? It'd be a pity to waste this half bowl of soybean milk. If you've yet to have eaten, you can have this here. Lin Fan was only teasing her jokingly. After all, he had already drunk more than half of it. Thus, the bowl already had a ton of his saliva. For any girl, let alone such a peerless beauty, it would be so humiliating to drink up so much of another's saliva. November LBJNN. Not yet, thanks. The initially stressed face of Gong Bingye loosened in relief as she took over the bowl from Lin Fan, much to his shock. Her soft, petite lips touched the bowl ever so gently, with such an alluring mannerism, as she sipped the flavor within slowly. Lin Fan's heart took a leap, and he couldn't help but praise himself. Could Gong Bingye have been attracted by his peerless charisma? Everyone who was watching was extremely puzzled as well. Just who was this man? He seemed to have a far more than an ordinary relationship with the Gong family's mistress. Gong Bingye was the mistress of the Gong family, and didn't head out of the house usually. But now, the Gong family was in dire straits. Thus, she had to hold the front against the outside world. But even then, there was no way she would just accept the half-eaten food of any random man. Lin Fan was left thoroughly speechless. His initial plan was to hold it in front of Gong Bingye and wait for her to reject before slurping the remaining soybean milk in one mouthful. At that time, this cocky guy would definitely ask who he was. He would then smash the bowl angrily on the floor before turning to face that guy. But now that his plan had gone haywire, goodness, where was he to find his tempo now? Gong Bingye had an idea of her own. Ever since her father passed away, the Gong family was in dire straits. Even if she had to find a companion, she should at least find someone whom she could be attracted to. Even though this mysterious man's actions were weird, but at least, Gong Bingye didn't entirely detest him. As for the feelings aspect, that could wait. They could slowly groom their feelings over time. But by the looks of it, this mysterious man was not a lustful man, and therefore could not be easily attracted by her gorgeous looks. Thus, she could only work hard on her own to look for a companion. As the mistress of a big family, whether or not she headed out, she would probably have ended up with someone she had never seen before in her life. Even though she could control her freedom somewhat now, she still couldn't be so selfish for the sake of the Gong family. Who are you? Lu Yiyuan asked coldly. You want some oil fritters? It's still warm. Lin Fan took his half-eaten oil fritters up to Lu Yiyuan's face. Impudent. The disciples crowding around Lu Yiyuan had wanted to step up to teach Lin Fan a lesson, but they were stopped by Lu Yiyuan himself. I'll ask you one last time. Who are you? Lu Yiyuan's eyes flashed violently. This man before him was being way too brazen. Oil fritter. Lin Fan smiled widely, entirely disregarding Lu Yiyuan's question. Audacious moron. Lu Yiyuan was incensed. Covered with a red glow of true energy, his palm flew towards Lin Fan's chest. Direct hit. Lu Yiyuan let out a cold laugh. But it was gone in an instant as he looked at Lin Fan in disbelief. Aren't you a little rude, Junior? Lin Fan patted off his chest gently. All the vagrant martial artists in the crowd were dumbstruck as well. This man was evidently a master. Even though they did not know his cultivation base, they could feel the intense strength of the true energy in Lu Yiyuan's palm strike. Lu Yiyuan's face turned serious as he stumbled a few steps back. His eyes gleamed. This guy was obviously no weakling to be able to withstand his strike so easily. Everything aside, this was a man he could not match up against. But Lu Yiyuan was not afraid of this guy. After all, he was a disciple of a sect. You seem to have a strong cultivation base, sir. Well, I am an inner sect disciple of the Huadao sect. If this kind sir truly wants to stand up for this lady, I would implore you to reconsider your choice. Lu Yiyuan said coldly. Suddenly, a lightning-fast palm flew rapidly to Lu Yiyuan's cheeks. Huh, what sect? Could you repeat once more? Lin Fan placed his palm on his ear and leaned in. The jaws of the vagrant martial artists in the crowd dropped wide open. They had not expected this man to strike just because he wasn't pleased with what he heard. And to think that he humiliated this Huadao sect disciple using the most humiliating way, a slap across the cheek. Seemed like the seeds of vengeance were definitely sowed immediately. Lu Yiyuan was an inner sect disciple of the Huadao sect. Therefore, his position was highly regarded. Now that this man had humiliated such a person, he was definitely in for it. Lu Yiyuan gritted his teeth and looked at this person. Pointing his finger, he stammered, I am an inner sect disciple of Huadao sect. You dare to, Good, very good. Lin Fan swept his robes from his shoulders down with both hands repeatedly, looking at this guy in disdain. Oh, Huadao sect inner sect disciple. Oh. You. Lu Yiyuan stared at him, entirely incensed. The disciples around Lu Yiyuan all stood stupefied at this scene, shocked at what was happening. You said you're an inner sect disciple. What's there to show off? What's this? Lin Fan said in disgust. He then took out a token and waved it in Lu Yiyuan's face. On that simple token was a carving of mountain peaks etched within it. Above those peaks was a single word, glory. What's this Yours truly is the master of Glory Sect's 11th peak, nameless peak. Goodness, even yours truly is embarrassed to take this out to flaunt. Bloody hell, and a little inner sect disciple of God knows what pariah Huadao sect dares to behave so audaciously over here as though you're truly a somebody. Lin Fan continued to wave the token in front of Lu Yiyuan so as to allow his dog brain to fully take in this new information. When Lu Yiyuan saw for himself the carvings and the word on the token, his face turned pale as a sheet. He recognized this token. This was the token that only belonged to a Glory Sect Peak Master. This was printed on the records of every sect out there. And even though Huadao sect was a sect, compared to Glory Sect, it was practically nothing. And to think that he had angered a Glory Sect Peak Master. Everyone in the crowd was flabbergasted at Lin Fan's words. Especially at the mention of Glory Sect, all of them were in awe. The name rang like thunder in their ears. Who hadn't heard of Glory Sect? It was a big sect. Looking at Lin Fan's back view, Gong Bingyi's expression changed as well. To think that this mysterious man was a disciple of Glory Sect, and a peak master at that. So, what's a kid like you barking about? You wanna bet that even if your Huadao sect's Grand Master were to appear before yours truly, I'd peel his skin off for you. Lin Fan did not know what the Huadao sect Grand Master's cultivation base was, but anyone could bullshit. After all, no one would know the truth anyways. Lu Yiyuan was stammering speechlessly in front of Lin Fan. That enraged heart of his was now filled with extreme terror. Yours truly does not wish to waste any more of his saliva on someone like you. Now, I'll hold on to these things on you for safekeeping. You go back and ask your Grand Master to head over to Glory Sect to find yours truly. I have a good mind to interrogate him on how he educates his disciples. Lin Fan did not wait for Lu Yiyuan to continue as he ripped the latter off of all his storage rings. He then stretched his hands into Lu Yiyuan's robes to see if he could find anything valuable. Sir, this. When Lu Yiyuan saw Lin Fan pull out a treasure map made of cow's skin, his face changed. What this and that? I'll keep all these. Ask your Grand Master to come retrieve them from me. One look at Lu Yiyuan's face and he knew that this was bound to be a goodie. Therefore, he did not give Lu Yiyuan a chance to explain and just confiscated it outright. Alright, move on now. Don't make yours truly get angry. After confiscating the items, Lin Fan waved his hands. Lu Yiyuan was looking extremely nervous. He wanted to speak up, but looking at who it was, he swallowed his words back inside. Scram. Translator's thoughts. Lam. I swear Lin Fan is the only man in this whole wide world who could pull off something like this so easily. Ha ha ha. Chapter 202. Different ways to let the masses adore. Chapter 202. Different ways to let the masses adore. Senior brother, we're leaving just like that? A disciple asked indignantly. What else can we do? Lu Yiyuan no longer had the haughty attitude he had earlier. He was now scratching his head and sighing furiously. He had not expected things to change as such. He had truly hit a roadblock now. Senior brother, could that be a fake token? Listening to this, Lu Yiyuan laughed mockingly. Would you dare to use it if it were given to you? The disciple bowed his head down in shame. Indeed, he would never dare to use it. The crime of being an impostor was unforgivable. No matter what, Lu Yiyuan was an inner sect disciple of Huadao sect. He could easily tell the difference whether that token was real or fake. At the same time, he need not try again to know that he was definitely unable to match that person's true strength. Even though he did not use up all his strength in that palm strike, it was still a powerful strike. As an inner sect disciple, of course, he practiced Huadao sect's truest skills. That strike was infused with a flaming molten fire. A nobody could definitely not have taken that with such ease. Even though the map is now gone, we must still head over to take a look for ourselves. Lu Yiyuan's purpose this time round was to search for a treasure in an abandoned forbidden ground. Lu Yiyuan did not know the nature of this treasure. And that was exactly the reason why he was curious about it, because he knew nothing about it. They had obtained the cow's skin treasure map under a chance occurrence. Even if Lu Yiyuan wanted to usurp the entire map for himself, it wasn't possible. After all, 10+ disciples were present at the scene. The only way to do that was to kill all of them and keep the treasure map hidden. But if he were to do that, before he even got to the treasure, he'd be killed by the sect first. Senior brothers, wait up. Wang Hao ran over from far away. He had finally gotten into a sect. How could he give up this golden opportunity just like this? Lu Yiyuan looked at Wang Hao from afar, frowning with scorn. Go, make him scram. Yes, senior brother. One of the disciples nodded his head. Even though Huadao sect wasn't the grandest sect, it was still in the dreams of many to enter a sect. Therefore, why would they randomly accept a trash? As an inner sect disciple, Lu Yiyuan just happened to be the chief invigilator for the entrance exam. He knew that Wang Hao came from the Mo City, and it just so happened that Mo City was pretty darn close to the place indicated on the cow's skin treasure map. Hence, Lu Yiyuan had only wanted to make use of Wang Hao. After all, traveling out of the sect required expenses as well. But now that things had come to this, Lu Yiyuan no longer had a use for Wang Hao. Mo City. Lin Fan was ecstatic as he kept the token back into his storage. To think that the plain-looking Peak Master token he had thought to be useless turned out to be so useful. Not only did he rob the other party dry, that guy didn't even dare to let out a single fart. Amazing. Lin Fan stood there. Once again, the feeling of being admired by the masses was amazing as well. The heads of the Wang and Song families had intended to come and watch the Gong family's predicament and jeer them on. But now that things had come to this, the both of them were experiencing turmoil of their own within their hearts now. They had clearly heard what this man had said. Glory sect, that glory sect. Since when did the Gong family have such a connection? And furthermore, he's the what? 11th Peak Master or something of glory sect. Even though they did not know what it meant, but judging by the looks of how that kid from Huadao sect was scared shitless, they garnered that he must be quite a somebody. In the end, both heads left quietly on their own. They were starting to fear for their respective futures. Gong Bingye looked at Lin Fan's back view and felt a jolt in her heart. In Gong Bingye's eyes, Lin Fan's figure seemed to be ever larger right now. Gong Bingye knew of Glory sect. That was a supremely huge sect. Even sects were graded by power. If that were the case, comparing Glory sect and Huadao sect was like the difference between heaven and earth. Gong Bingye did not feel like retreating because of the mysterious man's identity. In fact, it made her feel like conquering this man, or perhaps even keep him by her side. Since ancient times, heroes have always loved beautiful women. And the reverse was also true, as beautiful men would often find themselves attracted to the heroes. Even if there was no foundation for their feelings right now, there was no fear. After all, feelings could easily blossom as time passed. Lin Fan stood there without moving. he had to let these people in the crowd fully appreciate his masterful appearance. After all, he had no choice but to reveal his identity earlier on. Looking at the fearful look of the masses, Lin Fan felt a deep-rooted sense of satisfaction as well. Lin Fan turned around and looked at Wang Hu, who was lying on the ground, and he headed to him immediately with a frown. Muttering to himself, he continued, "Seems like the wound is deadly. He is on the brink of death. But do not fear, yours truly can naturally guarantee your safety." Upon hearing this, the crowd looked at one another in amazement. They could definitely tell the severity of Wang Hu's wounds. After all, the ground was all filled with blood. Naturally, the wound must have hurt him pretty deep internally. Lin Fan took out a pill. This was one of the healing pills Lin Fan had cultivated out of boredom. Naturally, it was of a pretty decent quality, unable to be produced by just anybody. This Jushui pill should be able to take care of your wounds. Even though Lin Fan's voice was not booming, he made sure it was loud enough for everyone in the vicinity to hear. Now, amongst those vagrant martial artists mixed within the crowd, some of them had been around and had heard and seen things. So, they had got some sort of inkling as to what this Jushui pill was, and they exclaimed. "That's the Jushui pill. What, isn't that the mystical pill which could supposedly heal any sort of wounds? In the marketplace, a pill like that would be extremely priceless. To think that the pill this man just casually took out would be the Jushui pill." Listening to these praises, Lin Fan was ever more elated within his heart. After all, this was the type of stuff he liked to hear from these audiences. Looking at Lin Fan, those impressive features of Gong Bingye began to soften. At the same time, an inexplicable feeling began to spread through her heart. The feeling seemed to tell her that the man before her seemed to be intoxicated within these adorations from the crowd. Gong Bingye chuckled. She had finally made clear some things she was uncertain of earlier. "Sir, this is a Jushui pill here. But the Gong family now has nothing. I'm afraid we can't afford this." On Gong Bingye's face revealed a look of distress. Lin Fan had intended to feed Wang Hu this pill. But upon listening to Gong Bingye's words, he hesitated slightly. Could this pill truly be worth this much outside? Even though the medicinal herbs required for this pill were slightly more than average and some of them were more valuable than others, this pill couldn't be that precious now, could it? But coming to think of it, he had no way of comparing the prices or knowing about such stuff back in the sect. But, since Gong Bingye had said so, Lin Fan just chuckled with a face of nonchalance. "Doesn't matter, it's just a pill. I can easily cultivate a new one." He achieved two meanings with this single sentence. Not only did he show off his gracefulness of not caring too much about the Jushui pill, it also told the world that the pill was cultivated by yours truly. Indeed, the moment Lin Fan finished his sentence, the audiences were filled with wows. As though she had confirmed the theory within her head, Gong Bingye revealed a smile as well. After Lin Fan fed the pill to Wang Hu, he walked over to Gong Bingye and held her arms. "Follow yours truly inside." Gong Bingye's face flushed as her heart thumped like a little deer which had lost its way. Isn't he being too hasty? I'm not ready. The vagrant martial artists in the crowd chuckled as well. Seemed like the Gong family was going to firm its place in history right at this very moment. For those vagrant martial artists who knew about the Gong family's situation, they shouted with cheers and happiness for the Gong family. Indeed, giving birth to a female was no less than a male these days. Gong family's deceased head, he gave birth to a good daughter indeed. Chapter 203, Tuodi Shrine. Chapter 203, Tuodi Shrine. Within the house, Gong Bingye's face was slightly blushed red as she followed Lin Fan's whims and wills, pulled along by her hand. Her heart beat erratically. Was that going to happen right now? Even though Gong Bingye had yet to experience it for herself, she had heard about it. When the servant girls discussed it in secret, she would sometimes eavesdrop as well out of curiosity. It would hurt, it would bleed, it might even bring about a new life. At the thought of this, Gong Bingye's jade, white skin flushed even redder. In fact, tears brimmed slightly around her eyelids. "All right, there are no outsiders here. No one will disturb us here." Lin Fan had dragged Gong Bingye within a house. Even though this was a shop as well, the shops had resting rooms themselves. At least if they were here, he wouldn't need to watch out for anyone eavesdropping as he interrogated her. When Gong Bingye heard this, her petite self trembled slightly. There was a hint of nervousness, a hint of hesitation. If she were to loosen her robes, would this man be attracted to her silky smooth skin? Looking at Lin Fan's back view, she stretched out her long, gentle hands. She wanted to help him disrobe. After all, the man before her was extraordinary. For the sake of her own happiness, for the sake of the Gong family's future, she had to take on some initiative. This token shard, where did you get it from? Lin Fan took out the Supreme Being token shard and asked without turning back. Gong Bingye, who had already prepared herself mentally, retracted her hands immediately, stunned. Her shy expression gradually returned to normal. So, this was all wishful thinking of her own. Gong Bingye could only feel an embarrassment burning through her, so ashamed she could find a hole to bury herself within. But the grace in this was that the other party had not seen what she was doing. Sir, this token shard was left behind by the Gong family's ancestors. As to where they had obtained it from, I have no idea. Gong Bingye focused her face and spoke as though nothing had just happened. Lin Fan sighed helplessly. He had not borne much hope before approaching her as well. After all, if the Gong family had known where to obtain it from, they would have long collected all the pieces by themselves. Forget it, I'll hold on to this token shard for now. But yours truly isn't someone who would just take things from anybody for free. If there's anything you need in the future, feel free to look for me at Glory Sect. Lin Fan did not change a single bit of his expression as he spoke, as though this was all righteous and just. Listening to what he said, Gong Bingye let out a chuckle, startled at the same time. She had found out that this man's character was mischievous and cheeky. After all, he had robbed this token shard from the start. Yet, he was now saying he wouldn't take things from anybody for free that easily. Why did everything sound so weird and contradictory? What, you don't believe me? Listening to that chuckle, Lin Fan felt that the other party was doubting him. Him, of all people, he was the 6th Grand Master of Saint Devil Sect of Glory Sect's nameless peak. Everything he said was filled with honor without a single lie within. I believe in you, sir. Gong Bingye's voice was gentle as she gave off the aura of a demure, perfect woman. Her gaze at Lin Fan was gentle yet filled with emotions. Every single blink of her eyes was enough to captivate any man's heart. Yes, yours truly isn't someone who would make false promises out of thin air. Even if you were to keep the token shard with you, you can't get anything out of it. If it's with me, it's also a form of guarantee for your safety. If there's anything untoward in the future, you can always head up to Glory Sect. Everything yours truly promises, yours truly fulfills. I would never lie to anyone. This little maiden here will always remember the words of this kind sir. Gong Bingye knew that there was no rushing this, so she could only take things slowly. Yes, then yours truly will make a move first. You don't have to send me off. Lin Fan flicked his robes, hands behind his back and walked out, chest puffed. Looking at the back view of Lin Fan leaving, Gong Bingye let out a smile. After getting a free roam of her body, he made up some excuse and tried to get away with it. There was no free lunch in this world, buddy. Furthermore, he had scammed the family heirloom of the Gong family. There was no way he was getting away with this for free. Gong Bingye's clever mind could easily tell the character of somebody just by looking at them and their actions. If Lin Fan were a vicious, cruel and evil man, no matter how confident she was, she would never dare to ruffle his feathers. But the way he was, things might just be able to go her way someday. All the vagrant martial artists who were waiting outside were startled to see Lin Fan out so quickly. How was he out so fast? Furthermore, by his delightful face, it was evident that he had a pretty good time inside. But, wasn't this speed way too fast? But then again, the Gong family's mistress was born with a perfect body and face. Any man would explode just by looking at her petite body alone. Surely, no man could last long enough with a lady like her. Exiting the house, Gong Bingye already had an idea of her own. Before she left the house, she pinched her jade, white cheeks gently with her fingers, creating a flushed look. She took off her hairband, allowing the long hair of hers to drop down like a waterfall as well. Ruffling them slightly, she left the house. The Gong family mistress is out. The crowd was excited. When they looked at her appearance, it confirmed every single bit of suspicion within their hearts as they looked at the man who was leaving in envy and jealousy. Yet another peerless beauty had been deflowered. Gong Bingye looked in the distance emotionally, as she rested her head in her palms with her elbows supported by the counter. That captivating look was even more alluring. It was regrettable that Lin Fan did not get any useful information out of it. But he wasn't worried about it. After all, there was a long way to go. He refused to believe that he couldn't get further information about the token shards after he had traveled the entire Dongling continent. Sha Yulong had prepared the carriages in wait for Lin Fan. Even though these carriages weren't majestic, they were very practical. Lin Fan took out the cow's skin treasure map taken from Lu Yiyuan and showed it to Sha Yulong. Let's go. We'll head off towards this direction. Lin Fan waved his hands for them to follow on. 3 days later. Sir, we have arrived. Sha Yulong's unique voice rang out from outside the carriage. In the past 3 days, Lin Fan had remained in his cultivation state. He had only just started on Nirvana Finger. There was a lot of work to be done on that skill. Even though the experience points for Nirvana Finger had increased, there was still a lot to go before it could even level up. Seemed like for a skill this powerful, the leveling speed was much slower as well. Lin Fan stepped out of the carriage. Seemed like the journey here was pretty smooth as well. He had not met with much trouble along the way, except for the occasional unsightly beasts. The plot of land before him was the place marked in the cow's skin treasure map. They were in the middle of some thick tree covers where sunlight could barely shine through. Indeed, this place felt somewhat creepy. N-O-V-E in.C Ohm. Sir, this is the Tuodi Shrine. It has been abandoned for a few hundred years. Sha Yulong had lived in this vicinity for a long period of time. Thus, he had some basic knowledge of the land around. This shrine was weird indeed. There was only a dilapidated hut in the middle of the clearing, with nothing built behind or around it. It seemed like the entire shrine existed underground. Lin Fan checked out the surroundings. At the entrance were some stupas. But one could not see what was within the pitch black inside. Sha Yulong, follow me in. The rest of you stand guard outside. Lin Fan ordered. Prepare the torches. Chapter 204. Kill first, talk later. Chapter 204. Kill first, talk later. Lin Fan was a little tense. After all, this was his first exploration expedition, and he didn't know what to expect within the ruins. He looked around at those desolated stupas which were filled with algae and moss all over them. They looked old. In fact, there were even some black dried-up bloodstains on them. Sir, this place gives off an uncomfortable vibe. Sha Yulong stood closely behind Lin Fan, examining the surroundings warily. Even before he entered that gate, which looked like hell's entrance, he was already feeling goosebumps all over his body. Lin Fan did not say much. He too was feeling pretty nervous and tense. These types of eerie scenarios were those that Lin Fan hated the most. If it were just a ferocious beast, Lin Fan wouldn't feel much about it. Worst come worst, he would just fight it to his death. But things like these were extremely creepy. If a bloody hand were to appear beneath his feet right now along with a ghastly face, he would break down immediately on the spot. The torch sizzled, illuminating the entrance of the shrine. But the darkness was so deep that the torch could only illuminate a small distance ahead of him, a few paths at a time. There was not a single spark of light within. Pitch black darkness. You stay outside as well. Lin Fan had intended to bring Sha Yulong with him. But now that things were like this, he was helpless as well. If anything bad were to happen inside, at least Lin Fan had ways of protecting himself. But as for Sha Yulong, he would probably be useless. He might not even know how he died if he died within. Sir, I'll be okay. Your cultivation base is too low. If anything were to happen within, I might not be able to protect you. Sha Yulong held back an urge to cry. How was his cultivation base low? He was at least a paracelestial master, and he was proud of it. But now that the Sir had said it as such, he could only obey and stand back. Even though the environment outside was still creepy as ever, compared to the darkness within, Sha Yulong would rather stay outside as well. After Sha Yulong retreated, Lin Fan continued on his own. Indeed, he affirmed his suspicions that the Tuodi Shrine lied underground. The stairways within extended all the way downwards. Even though Lin Fan did not know the breadth of the passageway, he could easily feel the other end of the wall with a stretch of his hands. The walls were lined with thick layers of dust. As Lin Fan continued feeling his way down, he felt some concave holes within the walls as well, as though something had bumped into them. Lin Fan did not know how long or far he had walked down, but the lower he got, the lower the temperature dipped as well. Poof, poof. Just then, the sounds of fire being lit passed through the entire passageway. The torches on both walls started lighting up, illuminating the path forward. This was the first time Lin Fan could clearly see what was ahead of him. Lin Fan extinguished his own torch and checked everything out carefully. It was a long tunnel ahead of him, both sides lined with human skeletons. Due to the time that had passed, some of these bones had already turned black. Poisonous snakes coiled around these skeletons as well. Lin Fan took in a deep breath and gripped the eternal axe tightly as he pushed forth. He wondered who the FCKTARD who built this, what the FCK Tuodi Shrine was. BL*Adi Hell. Why did he have to make it so creepy? When he reached the end of the tunnel, his vision widened. The small, cramped tunnel widened into a great, grand hall. Lin Fan observed the hall. On all three sides of the walls of the hall were gigantic statues erected upright. Each of these statues had their palms together in front of them, as though they were praying. On top of their 10 fingers was each a single altar, carved with etchings and runic marks. Where these runes should have been glowing when they were new, they were now dim and dull with the passage of time. Just as Lin Fan was about to step forth to check it out, he realized that there were a bunch of dead bodies before him. When he took a closer inspection, he was shocked. The clothing these bodies wore, weren't these from those of the Huadao sect? Lin Fan went and turned these bodies upright. He was stunned at the sight before him. These bodies had long turned into dried-up corpses, as though all their essence energy had been sucked out of them. The sight had Lin Fan sweating in his palms as well. How dangerous was this place? One by one, Lin Fan searched the corpses. There was a total of 6 of them. Lin Fan recalled upon the happenings in Mo City. Back then, there were more than 10 of these disciples. What happened to the rest of them? Where was Lu Yiyuan? Lin Fan raised his head, looking at the statues. He suddenly realized that all of the altars on the statues were open. Looking around carefully, all of them except for the statue right before him, which looked extremely imposing, had their altars opened up. Lin Fan garnered that Lu Yiyuan and gang must have arrived before him at this location. They must have opened the altars and released something horrible within, hence the dead bodies lying all around. At that very moment, Lin Fan felt a chill down his spine. He felt as though there were countless pairs of eyes staring at him from all around the darkness. Who's there? Lin Fan shouted, surveying his surroundings carefully. Step, 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 step. The sounds of footsteps echoed softly within the chambers of the hall, but they were quick. When Lin Fan made out who it was, he heaved a sigh of relief. One of them was Lu Yiyuan. Oh, so it's you guys. Yours truly nearly struck out and killed all of you instantly. Lin Fan chuckled. But that was when Lin Fan realized that something was amiss. A dark aura was being emitted from Lu Yiyuan and the other figures' bodies. This dark aura danced around their bodies, as though a consciousness was residing within them. Lin Fan checked the system immediately, and his face grew pale. Lu Yiyuan dead, possessed by spirits. Lin Fan did a head count. The number of people present matched the number of altars that were opened up. But what Lin Fan could not understand was, why wasn't the altar on the statue right before him open yet? Die! Lu Yiyuan, whose eyes were pitch black, cried out in a hoarse and ghastly voice. Lin Fan took a step back, cursing within his heart. Adi hell. Lu Yiyuan and his bunch of morons, what had they done to cause this to happen? Mother *CKER. You really think that yours truly is afraid of you? Without another word, Lin Fan raised his eternal axe. The void around him tremored. Activating firmament sword immediately, a long sword formed from his sword will appeared behind him. Sword and axe, he had them both out, ready to duke it out with these pieces of *T. Dragon King's hegemony. Lin Fan's body glowed brightly as a golden dragon coiled around his body. Eat your granddaddy's axe. Lin Fan did not wish to say anything more. First things first, time to chop them up and talk later. The Huadao sect disciples who were possessed by the spirit emitted an extremely dark aura, as though they were demonic beings not of this world. With a malevolent force, they burst towards Lin Fan. All of you, be gone. Lin Fan swung his axe heavily towards the black mist approaching him. As the eternal axe was flying towards them, Lin Fan did not take a break either. Nirvana finger. The void before him began tearing apart as the black mist began clearing along with it. During a war, one had to use his full strength. Even a duel between a tiger and a lion would see both sides baring their fangs, let alone against humans. Kill first, talk later. Chapter 205. Kneel in front of the big boss. Chapter 205. Kneel in front of the big boss. The eternal axe left a glowing streak as it sliced through the thin air towards one of the disciples who was possessed. Those pitch-black eyes of the disciple glared wide open as he opened his mouth, revealing charred dark teeth while huffing out a puff of black smoke. A ghastly face shape formed from the smoke, opening its mouth while trying to devour the eternal axe. However, the moment the eternal axe came into contact with the smoke dissipated immediately without any resistance. Poof! Lin Fan took a look joyfully. Smacked right in the middle of his skull. Direct hit. Cleaved open cleanly in one hit. Ding! Congratulations on defeating Paracelestial middle-level spirit. Ding! Experience points plus 100,000 feet. After all, Eternal Axe was the weapon of choice for the founder ancestor. Even the black hand which stretched out from the heavens was sliced cleanly into two by it, let alone this mere black smoke trying to devour it. It got to have been kidding. Die. Just then, another evil spirit flew towards Lin Fan. Pointing his finger at it, Lin Fan disintegrated the evil spirit instantaneously. Seemed like the skill which was imparted to him by the Supreme Being was bloody powerful. Even though this was only at level 1, to think that it was already this devastating. Lin Fan could not wait to see what the higher levels brought. Firmament Sword, go! The firmament sword, which was made up of his sword wool, darted forward, ripping through the void and piercing another evil spirit to death. Ding! Congratulations on defeating Paracelestial middle level spirit. Ding! Congratulations on defeating Paracelestial middle level spirit. ... As the notifications of experience points rang non-stop from the system, Lin Fan's heart was filled with non-stop joy as well. This was the type of feeling one ought to have while trying to level up. By this point in time, Lin Fan was like a wolf rampaging freely amongst a herd of sheep, chopping up everyone he saw. An axe, a sword, and a finger, that was a seamless combination. Like fresh sashimi on a chopping board, the spirits were sliced up, down, left, and right. Who else? Lin Fan stepped on an evil spirit with his feet and roared imposingly, looking at the rest of the evil spirits. When Lin Fan had just entered this place, he was so creeped out he could have pissed his pants. But to think that these evil spirits were so trash. One axe, one kill. There wasn't even any sign of resistance. What a bunch of weak chickens. Looking at the evil spirit beneath his feet struggling, Lin Fan cleaved his head open without hesitation. Raising his head and puffing his chest, Lin Fan glared at the rest of them. He sneered coldly, all of you bunch of evil spirits, you had better know your place and kneel down before yours truly, kowtowing for your mistakes. Otherwise, I'll let all of you have a taste of yours truly. Lin Fan hollered all he could. After all, the lives of these evil spirits were all in the palms of his hands. Lin Fan was a man who hoarded a number of high-end top-tier skills. Along with the fact that he didn't even rest in between his moves, throwing out several moves at one go, these guys didn't even have a chance to react against that. HMPH, how dare all of you ignore yours truly's goodwill? Alright then, let me show you guys the scariest move in this world. Lin Fan kept his eternal axe within his storage sack and started pinching and snapping his fingers. It had been a long while since he had used that. It was time to exhibit to the world once more, and these evil spirits shall make good practice tools. Ha 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 ha, Lin Fan laughed wildly as he dashed within the midst of the spirits. Twisting heaven and earth, holding onto an evil spirit with one hand, Lin Fan tore through the void with his other hand and reaching for the crucial target spot. Ding, experience points +1. Huh, Lin Fan's expression changed as his heart felt like 1,000 horses had just galloped over it. That's all the experience points it gave. Those disciples who had been possessed by these spirits did not feel any bit of pain. No matter the changes that happened to their bodies, they could not feel anything anymore. Trash. Lin Fan gave a look of disdain, pushing all the blame onto these evil spirits. Stretching his finger out, he destroyed the body of that evil spirit entirely with his deflowering finger. Ding, congratulations on defeating Paracelestial middle-level spirit. Now that you guys are all possessed by evil spirits, naturally as a benevolent senior, I cannot let you guys continue to stay on in this world under such humiliation. Let yours truly relieve you guys from this pain right now. Lin Fan no longer bothered to experiment anything else with these guys. They were simply way too trash. They weren't capable of helping him grind experience points. What other use were they of? Firmament Sword. The long sword flew around the void in a circle, killing all the evil spirits at once. After keeping his sword wool, Lin Fan looked at the last remaining altar. The runic symbols on the altar were still moving around gently, giving off a holy aura. Lin Fan presumed that it must contain another evil spirit as well. But Lin Fan was hesitating if he should let it out to slay it. He had a slight worry that this evil spirit may be way stronger than the rest, even stronger than him. If that were the case, wouldn't he be dead meat? After considering for a moment, Lin Fan decided to retreat. If it were a weak shit, killing it or not would make no difference. But if it were some high-level spirit and he couldn't deal with it, wouldn't that be real bad? The final conclusion was that opening this had way more to lose than gain for him. Lin Fan turned around to leave without hesitation. But just as he reached the entrance of the tunnel, an eerie voice came from behind. Stop there. Upon hearing this voice, Lin Fan froze up. Without even looking back, he tried to dash to the exit. But before he could even move, a stone wall fell down, blocking his path forward. Lin Fan threw a punch forward, intending to smash his stone wall. But to think that the blow would in fact rebound, causing him to fly a few steps back. You won't be able to leave. The voice came once more. Lin Fan turned around. He saw the black mist from all the corpses floating up and gathering like streams to a river into the final altar. And that voice came from within that altar. The accumulated black mist coiled around those runic symbols, as though they were struggling to fight against the holy aura produced by it. Lin Fan swallowed, somewhat nervous in his heart. But he knew that he couldn't panic at this moment. The heavens are benevolent. Yours truly considered the fact that it wasn't easy for you to survive this long even as a spirit, hence I decided to spare your life. Are you not cherishing my compassion? Lin Fan shouted solemnly without any nervousness. He had to give off the aura that to him, this altar was just a little ant. But in his heart, he could tell that this was about to FCK up so bad. He was clearer than anyone if this thing were strong or weak. And of course, the system wasn't all for show. On the system's notification panel, the indication above the altar was clear as day. Lesser celestial lower level. If they were all like this from the beginning, Lin Fan would not have been this afraid. But the main point was that, hadn't things escalated way too quickly? From paracelestial all the way up to lesser celestial. And in fact, this wasn't the end. The cultivation base had been steadily increasing for quite a while now. Lin Fan did not even know what it would end up at. The sacred monks had sealed me for 1,000 years, subjecting me to torment day and night. You shall be my first tribute as I break free. The voice came again. These words had Lin Fan's blood running cold. FCK it. I'll fight it. Lin Fan's face was pale right now. FCK. He would take it down before it got any stronger. Eternal axe, firmament sword, nirvana finger. Haha, not bad, not bad. To think that your majesty's first tribute would be this strong. Lin Fan exploded with all his power. But, a black barrier suddenly appeared in front of the altar, deflecting everything away from it. Even the eternal axe could not split it open. Right now, Lin Fan was truly petrified. Translator's thoughts. Lamb. Wow, shit has seriously gotten damn real guys. Chapter 206. Bullshit finally meets real shit. Chapter 206. Bullshit finally meets real shit. By this point, Lin Fan had an urge to cry. Of all things, why did he have to rob others? If he hadn't robbed anyone, he wouldn't be in possession of this treasure map, would he? And now that he was *s deep in danger, what was he to do? The aura surrounding the altar was gradually getting stronger as the holy aura around it diminished bit by bit. From within the altar, a black mist began to float out as well. Out, your majesty is heading out. The black mist started taking the shape of a human figure, but there was no physical self as though it was all smoke. From within the figure, a pair of sharp eyes glared at Lin Fan fiercely, causing his heart to thump furiously. Lin Fan retreated a few steps back, looking at the black figure nervously. What do you want? Che. The voice of the mist was cold and dismal, wrecking Lin Fan's nerves even further. You, wake up. Lin Fan searched in his storage sack frantically, eventually pulling out a token. Hey, take a look at this, What's this? Yours truly is the peak master of the 11th peak of the world's greatest sect, Glory Sect. If you dare to try anything funny, I guarantee that you'll be sure to regret it. Lin Fan truly was holding back the urge to cry. To think that he would have to one day flaunt his authority to an evil spirit in the hopes of it being scared off and letting him go. Just then, Lin Fan realized that the spirit seemed to be taking a slight pause. With this, he gathered up more courage and continued, actually, we can be pretty good buddies, you know. Look at you, freshly breaking out from your seal, you must be really unfamiliar with the world right now. With me around, I'll be sure to get you up to speed real quick. Alright, let us look for a nice tea house later when we arrive at the city and sit ourselves down for some serious talk about how we should continue with life from there on, shall we? By saying this, even Lin Fan felt that he himself was talking like a retard. But of course, he secretly wished that the spirit before him was equally retarded. But sad to say, he wasn't. Shesh, to think that you would have such an identity as well. Your body, your everything. Your majesty wants it all. The spirit laughed coldly. As though he grew wings, the figure enlarged and swooped towards Lin Fan. What, I even gave you so much face, and yet you wouldn't take it. Do you think that yours truly is a weakling to be pushed around? Lin Fan turned his fear into rage. Since there was no way of absolving this issue, the only way was to fight it. Gripping his eternal axe tightly, Lin Fan cut down multiple times in the direction of the spirit. Ha ha, you can't escape me. The spirit laughed as it dodged them all. The face that was formed on the figure was extremely predatory. It was very pleased with this prey it had found. Tidal push, 13 folds. Lin Fan was bursting and ready to go. Gathering his true energy, that palm strike containing 13-fold strength from Tidal Push flew furiously towards the evil spirit. Tidal Push was one of Lin Fan's melee skills, and he had not used it for a long time. But at this life and death junction, he had to give it his all, pushing all his skills towards this thing like a tsunami. But it was all to no avail. None of them had any effect on the evil spirit. The pitch-black claw of the spirit swiped through the void right in front of Lin Fan. Ding! Eternal Demon Body. Experience points plus 500,000. That's a strong physical body you got there. Not bad, not bad. As the claw struck Lin Fan, not only did his eternal demon body gain experience, 5 long wounds appeared across his chest as well. From those 5 wounds, his blood was beginning to flow out, mixed with the dark aura as though he was infected by it. Lin Fan was breathing heavily by now, hands clutching his chest as he stared at the evil spirit with caution and rage. You have forced my hand. Lin Fan looked at the evil spirit with bloodshot eyes. This was the second time in his life he had felt this helpless. The fighting strength of this evil spirit had way surpassed Lin Fan's expectations, way surpassed. As the figure floated above Lin Fan, those eyes on its face let out a look of mockery. Now, just like one could not constantly pull his hair up to make himself seem taller, one could naturally not kick his balls with his own legs. But at this juncture, Lin Fan was ready to break that myth. Even though the process would be arduous, it was nothing compared to dying here. Balls kicking, Lin Fan roared, arching his right leg awkwardly towards his crotch area. Swinging a hook arc with power. Lin Fan knelt on the floor in agony, feeling surges of pain rising through his body. As that self-mutilation, the evil spirit encircled Lin Fan, laughing continuously. Lin Fan bore with the pain and stared at the evil spirit. He then retrieved a bigra from his storage sack and consumed it. If it came to viciousness, Lin Fan could be more vicious than anyone else. When he wouldn't even spare himself the pain of ball kicking, who could compete with him? Back in Saint Devil Sect, when he had stolen his own peaches, Lin Fan could say that he regretted that. But now that things had come to this, Lin Fan no longer felt the same regret. If he didn't kick himself, he'd have to kneel over to this evil spirit. Compared to his precious life, this pain was nothing. By now, Lin Fan was going to reach that explosive state he was hoping for. The moment he consumed the bigra, he was pretty much hyperventilating. An immense amount of power surged through his entire body, as though he was ready to break through day and night. The spirit called out in surprise. The man he had taken as an ant was undergoing a change. Slay! Lin Fan's eyes were flushed red. He waved out the eternal axe, and the startling speed caught the evil spirit by surprise as he barely dodged it. Lin Fan swore that if he still couldn't defeat the evil spirit with this, he'd acknowledge that this was his fate. Bearing this immense pain, all he wanted to do was to increase his fighting strength. If this option still failed him, there was nothing else he could do anymore. Eek! The black mist dissipated and reformed into the human figure, but somewhat unstable now. What did you do exactly? Lin Fan was in no state to speak at all. In fact, the pain was so unbearable he was only keeping himself sane just through sheer willpower. Axe after axe, he swung the blows towards the evil spirit. This explosive strength was about to rip the void apart as the entire hall started vibrating as well. The spirit's figure constantly disappeared within the void to dodge. Chech. Even though I do not know what method you used to increase your own strength, a pity it's still not enough. The voice of the spirit came from all directions. The look of shock on its face initially had disappeared, as it regained the look of mockery. His true body had decomposed after these 1,000 years. Hence, he was in search of a physical body. This man before him fitted all the requirements he wanted. Come, show me your strongest strength. At that moment, your body shall belong to your majesty, the spirit said with a hint of excitement. Lin Fan was pretty helpless by this point. This spirit was simply too strong. No matter how he tortured himself, there was no way he was going to beat this thing. Seemed like he had kicked his own nuggets for nothing. Was this the day he was going to perish? Big brother, please give me a chance. I will no longer act with so much bullshit in the future. By now, Lin Fan had surrendered. The effects of ball kicking were gone. He had also expended all the energy gained from bigra. He had nothing left. Shesh. The figure encompassed Lin Fan like a cage as streams of black mist and entered Lin Fan's body through his nose. If one gazed long enough into the abyss would gaze at one as well. The bullsh *TTER had finally met with some real *T. I'm dead. Translator's thoughts. Lamb. Hi guys. In case you're confused, che is the laughing sound that the spirit is making. Think of it using onomatopoeias. Also, the way the spirit is referring to himself as Your Majesty is the same way Lin Fan refers to himself as yours truly. In the raw texts, the spirit calls himself a king. Also, in the raws, the author gave a slight preview for the next chapter. Since this chapter is so exciting, I shall give it to you guys as well. Let's see who's afraid of who. We'll harm each other then. Chapter 207, Torment One Another. Who's afraid of whom? Chapter 207, Torment One Another. Who's afraid of whom? In an instant, the black smoke which surrounded Lin Fan entered his nose and took over his entire body. Energetic and robust body with top-notch potential. Seems like the heavens are kind to Your Majesty. The spirit who had entered Lin Fan's body checked him out easily and exclaimed in delight. A series of frenzied laughter rang through Lin Fan's mind. FCKU. Get out of me. Out. Lin Fan started to realize that he was gradually losing control of his body, and began to panic. To think that in this vast heaven and earth, within the human realm, a man with your potential could actually exist. Seems like it won't be an ambitious thought for Your Majesty to return to his peak form. Just be obedient and hand your body over to Your Majesty. The voice vibrated within Lin Fan's mind. This series of voices only served to anger Lin Fan further. This guy was too much. Lin Fan could only feel a darkness within his consciousness, slowly tearing and ripping its way through his mind, and enveloping him within it. Lin Fan wanted to resist badly, but it was no use. The spirit was simply way too strong. His consciousness against this thing's power was just like an egg striking a rock, smashing itself to pieces. FCK. Lin Fan was almost in tears. All of those novels were just lying. Shouldn't the main character experience a powerful change or at least exert an extraordinarily strong aura at this juncture to turn the tides around? Why was it that he was powerless against this thing? Lin Fan slowly realized a puff of black mist was spreading up his body from his right wrist. The further it went up, the less control he had over his body. Lin Fan wanted to roar so badly, to fight so badly, but he was rendered helpless by this spirit. Was he really going to die here and leave his body in control of this spirit from this day forth? No please. Yours truly had yet to marry someone and breed some lovely kids. Yours truly had yet to reach the peak of his life. The pretentious bullshit he had continuously been concocting within his mind had yet to be spread throughout the world. What about vengeance for Saint Devil Sect? He was not done with this life. Stop resisting. If you're a good boy, I may even consider leaving you that bit of consciousness. Placing this body in your hands would just be a waste. Only Your Majesty can truly bring out the potential of this magnificent body. The spirit could feel Lin Fan trying to resist, but it knew that he was helpless against this possession. Big brother, can't we come to an agreement? How about this? I'll take the body on 1, 3, 5s. You can have it on the 2, 4, 6. The last remaining day, we'll decide using rock paper scissors. How about that? Lin Fan was crying by now. This spirit was like a rabid dog, crazily mangling his body away. And the worst thing was that he could do nothing about it. Chech. Your Majesty wants it all. The spirit replied greedily, and was extremely excited. It had not expected to obtain such a body with so much potential the moment it broke out. Perhaps with this, it wouldn't be too long before it reached back to his fullest potential. Then, it would be able to seek vengeance on those darn sacred monks who had sealed him. He would squash them beneath his feet and devour their bodies as retribution for the past 1,000 years of sealing. The black smoke had consumed his right half of the body by now. Lin Fan's mind continued spinning rapidly, trying to think up of a way out of this. How now, brown cow? How could he die right here? FCK, stop being so impudent. Lin Fan roared angrily. This was it. This guy was simply way too much. Even if he were to die, he'd take this bastard down with him. What can you do if Your Majesty wishes to be so? The spirit jeered and increased the speed of its possession. By the time the black mist had thoroughly enveloped Lin Fan would no longer be Lin Fan, but just a zombie. Good. Since you wanna play like this, let's do it. Let's see who can deal with the other first. Lin Fan let out an incensed look. He could only take this gamble right now. Even if he were to perish entirely, he couldn't let this spirit get this good a bargain. Anything he couldn't get his hands on, nobody should get it either. Heaven and earth smelt, come out. Lin Fan cried out. The heaven and earth smelt illuminated brightly as it flew out from Lin Fan's body and floated above his head. Heaven and earth changed, as though everything was about to be absorbed by it. One by one, dragons made out of smoke clouds coiled themselves around the smelt. What's this? The spirit who was trying to possess Lin Fan exclaimed out loud as well, as it felt this astounding aura being produced by the smelt. This feeling was extremely terrible for the spirit. HMPH. Yours truly has many toys at his disposal. Even if yours truly were to lose his life today, he'd kill you along with it. Trying to snatch yours truly's body. HMPH. Let's see who's afraid of whom. Let's harm each other then. Using my body as a material, heaven and earth smelt. Lin Fan howled fanatically, his eyes revealing a look of frenzy. He had no other choice. Even if he were to die, this bastard must definitely go down along with him. Clank. A smoke dragon burst the doors of the smelt open, revealing the fiery flames within. A long rainbow came out, dragging Lin Fan into the smelt along with it. Where is this? What have you done? The spirit itself was starting to panic as well, looking at the confusing and messy surroundings of the smelt. Lin Fan laughed coldly. Smelt. Just then, the smoke dragons began breathing fire as they swam and flew around the insides of the smelt. Streams after streams of cultivating fire surrounded Lin Fan. A tragic cry rang from within the smelt. Even though Lin Fan's eternal demon body was at a pretty decent level, it still wasn't enough to endure the power of the smelt. Stop. Stop it right now. The spirit now began to retrace its steps and retreat frantically. The black mist was now culminated into a concentrated ball of darkness, as though it was trying to fight against this deathly burn by the cultivating fire. Stop. Stop your mother. Didn't you say that you want the body of yours truly? Didn't you like to snatch yours truly away from myself? Alrighty then, big boy. Come, we'll see who's afraid of whom. Lin Fan laughed hysterically. The power of the smelt was driving him to the brink of insanity. Not only was the spirit suffering, Lin Fan was suffering every equal bit. You'll die, the spirit hollered. HMPH. If yours truly is even ballsy enough to harm himself, would death scare me? Cultivate more. Lin Fan continued laughing wildly. The cries continued to ring out from within the smelt. This was the first time Lin Fan had entered the heaven and earth smelt and was enduring every bit of its power. Ding. Eternal demon body. Experience points plus 1 million. Ding. Eternal demon body. Experience points plus 1 million. ... Not only were the experience points of eternal demon body skyrocketing, so was the pain that Lin Fan was enduring. Within the smelt, one did not only undergo physical turmoil, even his mental self was being ripped apart. After all, the heaven and earth smelted everything. Stop. Stop. Alright, we'll do as you said. You'll have the body on 1, 3, 5s. I'll take 2, 4 feet 6a. The spirit was starting to fear for its own safety. The way the smelt was tormenting it, it might seriously dissipate into thin air as this goes on. Ha ha ha, you dream on. Lin Fan continued laughing manically. FCKU in your 2, 4, 6a. Yours truly would fight you to the end, even if yours truly were to die. This is your majesty's biggest concession for you. The spirit said grimly. It had not expected this man he had thought to be an ant to come up with tactics like these. Lin Fan laughed coldly and did not say anything anymore. Smelt. 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 Ding. Eternal demon body. Experience points plus 1 million. Ding. Eternal demon body. Experience points plus 1 million. ... Chapter 208. You can feel honored about it. Chapter 208. You can feel honored about ITNO vel B in .c ohm. The heaven and earth smelt was still burning fierily. However, the smelt was still under Lin Fan's control after all. He did not dare to activate its full capacity. If not, he'd be ashes in an instant. Slowly but surely, his physical body's temperament was improving with time as well, despite the unbearable pain. But what Lin Fan could not take was the mental turmoil. It wasn't anything fit for humans to be undergoing. The spirit belonged to the yin side, while the power of cultivating from the smelt belonged to the yang side. Lin Fan was just waiting to see how long this spirit could endure as well. The spirit was wailing within his consciousness, but Lin Fan was not any better off. His eyes were burning red, as this pain was truly intolerable. Lin Fan's entire body was flushed red as well, with his veins all popping out. His hands were gripped so tightly that his fingernails had dug deep into his palms, dripping blood all over the floor of the smelt. However, due to the heat within the smelt, every drop of blood was instantly evaporated as well. This pain was unimaginable, one which Lin Fan hoped that he would never have to go through ever again. But he would not have done this if he had not been pushed this far by the spirit. Taking over his body was one thing Lin Fan would never agree to, even if he were to die in this smelt. Stop, I'll stop possessing you. Please, just stop it. The spirit was frantic by now. It realized that it only had 2/3 of its initial self left. If this were to carry on, it would truly disappear from the face of this earth. Sure, come out then. Lin Fan huffed heavily, his vision was blurring as well. If this was to continue on much longer, he might not be able to withstand it himself as well. Leave this place first. Once we're outside, I'll leave you. The spirit was no fool either. There was no way it could just leave Lin Fan's body here right now. HMPH, what if you turn back on your word once we get out? Out you go now. Don't worry, your majesty's words are like gold. I do not make empty promises. The spirit's voice was grim as well, showing off how bad of a state it was in right now as well. HMPH, so, you're implying that yours truly would lie to you as well? Yours truly is the peak master of the 11th peak of glory sect. Would I lie to you? No, once we leave here, your majesty will leave you immediately. If I don't, you can enter back into this place at any time. Lin Fan was sharp as well. This heaven and earth smelt was not a tool for attacking. The only reason why he could enter this smelt in the first place was because he was its master. If he got out of this smelt and the spirit decided to kill him straight up after leaving his body instead of possessing him, wouldn't he be dead meat by then? Lin Fan squinted his eyes and roared, yours truly only disgusted with you out of my kind-heartedness. But to think that you would reject my offer. That's an insult to yours truly. All right then, yours truly will drag you down with me even if it means death. We'll see. Smelt. No, the power of the smelt rushed through Lin Fan's body like a tidal wave. Ding, congratulations on leveling up, Eternal Demon Body. Ding, Eternal Demon Body, level 15. Even though Eternal Demon Body had leveled up, his physical body state had yet to level up, implying that he wasn't at his limits just yet. At the same time, Lin Fan was only activating a small fragment of the heaven and earth smelt's true power. If he were to increase the power up a tiny notch, he was sure that there would no longer be any screams as they would both turn into ashes. We'll both harm each other. Let's see who's afraid of who now. Yours truly has given you enough face with my preposition. Since you rejected me, let's both die here. Lin Fan said cruelly. The resolute look on Lin Fan's face did scare the spirit a tiny bit. It had thought that it was getting a bargain for getting such a fabulous body. To think that things would come down to this. All right, stop, I give in, I'll come out. The spirit was fearful by now. This was a lunatic who chose death rather than letting it possess himself. Lin Fan was actually really fragile by this point. The mental turmoil was practically driving him nuts. He didn't even want to lift his finger if he could choose not to. But in front of the spirit, he must still put on a strong front and not let any weakness pass through. Faster, Lin Fan hollered. Lin Fan had the upper hand now. If the spirit wanted to continue existing, it had to play by Lin Fan's rules. You have to swear that if your majesty were to come out, you cannot go back on your words. The spirit hesitated. Under the pain of the smelt, it eventually relented with this statement. All right, yours truly swears that I will not go against my words. Lin Fan said with a straight face. All right, your majesty shall trust you. Just then, a puff of black smoke blew out from Lin Fan's nose as the figure reappeared before Lin Fan. The figure no longer had the same imposing aura it had before. With the destructive power of the smelt, the figure was only around half the size it initially was. In your majesty's entire life, I've never met a human who is more hateful than you. The black figure floated there and lamented disappointedly. Unable to possess this body was the regret of a lifetime for this spirit. HMPH. Lin Fan snorted coldly. Lin Fan did not want to say anything more to this spirit. Trying to possess yours truly. If I don't kill you, I swear that I won't be considered a human anymore. All right, it's time for you to fulfill your end of the promise. Let your majesty out. Sure, Lin Fan laughed coldly and towards the entrance which swung open as he approached. The spirit followed tightly behind him. But just as the spirit was about to exit as well, the entrance swung back closed, locking it within. The moment Lin Fan exited the smelt, he collapsed onto the ground, breathing heavily in deep breaths. He then took out a fresh set of clothes from his storage and wore them. HMPH, you wanna compete with me as to who is more vicious? Yours truly is 1,000 times way more vicious than you can ever be. Lin Fan continued snorting. Damn you, you went back on your words. The spirit yelled from within. Moron. Based on your intellect, I can tell how you've been sealed for 1,000 years. What a fool, Lin Fan said in disdain. Even though this boss was powerful, its intellect was pretty low. But then again, the measure of one's intellect was determined when one was still in one's mother's womb. Thus, one could never blame anyone for it. The spirit screamed at the top of its lungs within the smelt, "You'll die a horrible death for this. How dare you go against your words? HMPH. Your death is worthy of something. After all, you're the first person who could push yours truly to this state. Take honor in that. However, that's the end of your path." After this experience, Lin Fan was even more clear. The world outside was fraught with dangers. If one didn't have what it took, all one could do was to be pushed around by others. Lin Fan flicked his robes, hands behind his back, and looked at his smelt sternly. Anything that dared to behave so insolent in front of yours truly could only deserve one end, disappearing entirely from the world. Let me out, I'm the king of spirits. Your Majesty carries the greatest treasure in this world within my body. So long as you let me out, I'll give you whatever power you seek. Gradually, the voice of the spirit began to diminish. Finally, a voice of boundless hatred came out, "You'll regret this. Your Majesty curses that you meet with a terrible death." Listening to the spirit's curse, Lin Fan was not bothered in the least bit. He finally waved his hands. Heaven and earth smelt. Translator's thoughts. Lamb. Hi guys. Wondered what's with the spirit being yin and the heaven and earth smelt being yang? That's because of the yin-yang theories. Remember how I previously mentioned that yin could belong to the female aspect of oneself and yang being the male aspect? There's another way to interpret it. Yin can often refer to darkness and evil sides of oneself, while yang refers to the light and just side, etc. So things like coldness etc. also belongs more to the yin side, while fire and heat belongs to the yang side as well. You guys can Google it up to be clearer about it. Cheers. Chapter 209, The Mysterious Tuodi Shrine. Chapter 209, The Mysterious Tuodi Shrine. Ding, congratulations on defeating Greater Celestial Middle Level, King of Spirits. Ding, experience points plus 600 million feet. Ding, congratulations on leveling up. Ding, congratulations on smelting success. Ding, congratulations on discovering Spirit Crystal. Ha, Lin Fan was dazed by the numerous notifications by the system. Overwhelmed with joy, he burst out laughing. Lin Fan had initially thought that he wouldn't gain anything from this smelt. In fact, the kill of the spirit may not even be granted to him. To think that he would gain both the sumptuous feast of experience points and the smelt product. He had earned it big time now. Big time. Seemed like yours truly was a blessed, lucky man indeed. No matter what he did, it all went right in the end. At this point, Lin Fan was no longer pissed at the spirit for trying to take over his body. After all, its death was pretty worthwhile. Seemed like even though this expedition of Tuodi Shrine was fraught with dangers, the rewards were pretty fulfilling. At the same time, he even had a deeper understanding of the heaven and earth smelt and as a bonus, increased his cultivation base. Paracelestial lower level. Even though his cultivation base wasn't that high, he was sure that just based on fighting strength alone, he was comparable to a lesser celestial by now. Spirit Crystal, formed from the essence of the King of Spirits. An item which allows you to communicate with the 9 spiritual realms. The crystal was around the size of his fist, purple in color. Lin Fan looked at it somewhat puzzled. Just how was he supposed to make use of this thing? Lin Fan did not want to think too much about it for now and threw it within his storage sack. Even though the big boss was defeated, this Tuodi Shrine still seemed to be filled with mysteries. One gaze across and Lin Fan could take in everything about the shrine with one look. But he was sure that there was more to this than what met the eye. The Tuodi Shrine had existed for so long, and he was sure that there must have been tons of people who have explored this place before him. Why had none of them met these spirits who had been sealed in these altars? That was weird. Lin Fan turned his gaze up to the altars on top of the fingers, wondering if these things still had any use. Ding, congratulations on discovering sealed altar broken. He took down one of them and looked at it. It seemed pretty useless and looked extremely normal. Furthermore, it was broken. But coming to think of it, these things were treasures in the past. Lin Fan threw it within his storage sack as well. Perhaps, he might be able to find a use for it sometime in the future. Lin Fan continued scouring Tuodi Shrine. Looking behind the gigantic statues, he did not find anything unusual. He even smashed one of the statues to check if there were anything hidden within. This behavior of his could be attributed to poisoning by all the novels he had read in the past. Treasures could be found in all sorts of inconspicuous locations, and he would rather be sure not to miss any of them. After all, wouldn't he reap a big fortune if he managed to find something rare? When he truly couldn't find anything within the Tuodi shrine, he then turned around to leave. Even though this Tuodi shrine seemed like there was more to it, based on the situation right now, perhaps the time just wasn't right yet. Maybe he should return at a later time to see if there were any changes to this place. Sha Dulong and the other bandits were awaiting outside. Lin Fan had entered for an entire day and night, but yet had not returned. This was a worrisome fact. Big brother, do you think that anything might have happened inside? Sha Mieshang was fanning a bonfire as he sat on the floor. This Tuodi shrine's surroundings were extremely creepy. During nighttime, there would be some eerie sounds coming from time to time. If their big brother had not asked them to stay around, perhaps they might have even decided to run off from this place. They all knew that they had gotten a good deal by following Lin Fan around. But now that he was gone for an entire day and night, no one knew if he were still alive or dead. They couldn't be waiting around here for the rest of their lives, right? Sha Dulong frowned and did not reply. Eventually, he let out a sigh. We'll wait for 2 more days. If Sir does not come out 2 days later, we'll leave. Sha Dulong did try to check out what was happening from outside the entrance. But the inside of the shrine was so dark that he wouldn't even be able to see his fingers outstretched, let alone what was happening. Even just by standing at the entrance, Sha Dulong could feel an intimidating and evil aura emitting from within the shrine. Just then, a sound came from beyond. The 14 sand bandits were alerted immediately. Sha Dulong even pulled out his curved saber, ready to fight should anything go wrong, staring cautiously ahead. But by the time he could make out the figure, he let out a sigh of relief and headed forth. Sir, you're out. Yes, Lin Fan nodded his head. But when he saw the presence of a bonfire, he was quite startled. How long have I been inside for? An entire day and night. Lin Fan was pretty astonished. He had not expected time to pass by so quickly. He had barely felt the moving of time inside. All right, let's prepare to move out. Lin Fan did not want to think too much about this Tuodi shrine anymore. Even though he had wiped the spirits within, the place still gave him an uneasy feeling. Pack up and prepare to move out. Sha Dulong did not ask much and just relayed the order to his brothers. Lin Fan's carriage slowly left the area. Tuodi shrine was once again shrouded in a creepy aura, as the entire place returned to its desolate and silent state. Occasionally, weird noises would come from the surroundings. As night fell, the moonlight tried to pierce through the night and shine directly upon Tuodi shrine, but it was blocked by the thick tree covers. But just then, a beam of light broke the darkness. A crow flapped down from the far distance. It was covered with a stench of dead bodies as those glowing ruby red eyes of it surveyed the surroundings. The crow flew slowly into the Tuodi shrine, through its dark entrance, and made its way slowly into the hall. The crow stopped on the biggest and most imposing statue as its ruby red eyes let out a shining bright red light. Suddenly, the black feathers of the crow were filled with blood, gushing out like a stream. The crow cawed terribly until it finally became a corpse and disappeared. As though it had a life of its own, the blood flowed downstream from the statue. Continuously, it flowed and seeped into the ground. A black stone sarcophagus laid quietly beneath the entire shrine. Thick chains coiled around the sarcophagus while above it was a golden skeleton sitting cross-legged on it. The skeleton gave off an ancient aura, evidently being an extremely powerful being. N-O-V-E in .C Om. On the walls surrounding the chamber were runic markings etched all around it. Just then, a puff of red smoke slowly emitted from within the black sarcophagus. However, the runes on the walls immediately gave off a bright glow. The moment the smoke touched the glow, it retreated back into the sarcophagus. Drip by drip, the crimson blood dripped onto the skeleton from the ceiling. As every drip touched the skeleton, it began to darken bit by bit. On the walls, one of the runes dimmed and disappeared entirely. The chambers then returned to complete darkness. Chapter 210. Robbery once more. Chapter 210. Robbery once more. From a distance, the meandering mountain peaks curved and bent like dragons traversing the skies. Mountainous paths of varying sizes existed between cliffs, lined with luscious trees and forests. From time to time, the melody of birds chirping would ring in the air. Indeed, this was a picturesque scenery. Within one of the mountain paths, a group of figures gradually appeared. Senior brother, why are we not using the sect's ark for this expedition? We've been out for so many days that my feet are blistering. Within this group of people clad in blue robes, a young girl was grumbling to a man walking in front of her. Junior sister, crossing mountains and seas is also a form of training. Along our way here, you've increased your cultivation base by a level, and all our junior brothers have benefited from this experience as well. Even though using the ark would be convenient, would we still have such encounters had we used the ark? The man who was leading the pack was suave and elegant, with a sharp V-shaped face. On that stern face was an air of haughtiness. The young lady nodded in agreement at her senior brother's words. Senior brother, the fiery hell seems like a treacherous place. Would we be in any danger? And also, I've heard rumors that the mysterious beast has appeared once more. Would we bump into it? Lei Yifeng stopped his footsteps. Junior sister, we aren't here to play in this expedition. The fiery hell is a training ground. Even right where we are now, we cannot afford to even let our guards down now and be careless. Regarding this junior sister, Lei Yifeng was somewhat helpless. Even though she had entered the sect not too long ago, she had an extremely high potential. Within a short span of 8 years, she had already climbed to be a paracelestial middle-level warrior. But what frustrated Lei Yifeng was her character. If she could endure all the training given, with her potential, it wouldn't be impossible for her to hit full cultivation of paracelestial as well. Got it, but then again, with senior brother here, how could there be any dangers for us? Furthermore, the scenery here is so beautiful. How could this place be dangerous? Xing Yueyu stuck out her tongue and said cheekily. Senior brother only knew how to be serious all day and night, not even cute in the slightest manner. The more beautiful a place, the more dangerous it is. You must remember this in your heart, junior sister. Lei Yifeng shook his head. He did not know if it were the right decision to bring this junior sister along for the expedition this time around. Even though their purpose here was to train up these junior brothers, the main motive was actually to check out the situation of the fiery hell. The vicinity of the fiery hell was expanding over time, burning more area as time went by. Furthermore, the temperature was steadily increasing as well. They had to check out just what was going on. Che, I refuse to believe it. How could such a beautiful place be dangerous? In my opinion, senior brother, you are just making a mountain out of a molehill. You need to know how to enjoy life. Xing Yueyu said mischievously. The surrounding disciples chuckled. Towards this cute little junior sister, they have taken quite a liking as well. But their senior brother's serious expression did keep them on their toes as well. Young girl, what your senior brother said is right. The more beautiful a place is, the more you should be wary of it. Just then, a gentle voice came from the distance. Everyone was startled. Lei Yifeng turned around cautiously as well. Xing Yueyu was rooted on her spot at first, but moved to stand beside her senior brother. Who is it? Come out, Lei Yifeng said sternly. Lin Fan stepped out with his hands behind his back. Following closely behind him were the 14 sand bandits. Now, calm down, ladies and gentlemen. I mean no harm, this is just a small robbery. Lin Fan's face was extremely calm, bringing about a pleasant smile. This was going to be decent robbery. In the past 2 weeks, Lin Fan had lost his carriage. When they were passing by a danger ground in the middle of their journey, they met with a stampede of beasts by chance. As these beasts ran towards them, it felt like there was an earthquake. Lin Fan was initially excited by the scene. If he killed all of these beasts in one swoop, that would be a sh*t ton of experience points. But when Lin Fan spotted a few beasts of lesser celestial cultivation bases within the beasts, he changed his mind immediately. Hiding along with Sha Yulong and the other bandits, he could only watch helplessly as the carriage they did not manage to hide in time got drowned within the stampede of beasts. Therefore, Lin Fan, who was enjoying his journey in comfort, could only rely on his legs to travel along with Sha Yulong and the rest of the bandits. And just like that, 10 days had passed, and they had exhausted all their provisions. They could only rely on hunting beasts for food daily. What a terrible life that was. Now that they were approaching the fiery hell, Lin Fan had intended to just briefly check out the location indicated in the 7 Saints treasure map, before heading to a nearby town to replenish their stocks. But at that very moment, Sha Mieshang, who was casually strolling outside, hurried over, reporting that he had found a group of people. Initially resigned to life, Lin Fan was revitalized the moment he heard this. If he did not grab this piece of meat that had dropped right before his mouth, there would be no other chance for this golden opportunity. Ever since Sha Yulong and the bandits had followed Lin Fan, the thoughts of robbing anyone had entirely vanished from their minds. But when Lin Fan gathered them to have them prepare for one, they were nevertheless excited. Senior brother, are these what do they call them, bandits? Don't they know who we are? Xing Yueyu was not in the least bit nervous as she let out an excited smile. But Lei Yifeng continued surveying them warily. Sha Dulong and the other bandits were of paracelestial cultivation base. Therefore, they naturally let out a strong aura. This, Lei Yifeng could sense. But if this were the only thing, he wouldn't be so worried. What he was concerned about was Lin Fan. This man did not give off any sort of aura at all. Silent and deadly. Who are you guys? Lei Yifeng held back his junior sister and asked. Looking at this bunch of disciples, Lin Fan was also pondering in his heart. By the looks of it, they looked pretty wealthy. They should have plenty of resources available on their rich selves. But as a celebrity of Glory sect, Lin Fan would not do anything underhanded such as killing people and looting their dead bodies. However, everyone had their times of needs. Now, seeking some help while one was in dire straits wouldn't be too much now, would it? Who we are isn't important. What's important is that you guys, please stand still and cause no fuss. I'm only here to rob you. I don't want to take your lives. Lin Fan had 3 rules for robbing. No killing, no raping, only robbing of wealth. Insolent, we're the disciples of Daozhong sect. You dare to rob us? A disciple shouted from within their midst. This was the first time they had encountered something like this. If they were to head back and let their senior brothers know that they had been robbed while on an expedition, wouldn't they be the laughingstock of the sect? Haven't you heard what our honorable sir had said? Stop creating a fuss and leave your valuables. Sha Mieshong had been a bandit for a long time. Thus, he was at his happiest when he was conducting a robbery. Now that he had followed a strong man and was still able to go back to his old trade, he was naturally overwhelmed with joy. This was the way a true robbery should go, full of intimidation and fearsomeness. He had to be so intimidating that the other party would not even dare to resist. Senior brother, what are we even doing wasting time with them? Let's just kill them, a disciple whispered. Lei Yifeng was hesitating in his heart, unable to make a decision. The man before him gave off a really dangerous feeling. Haha, Lei Yifeng, to think that you guys from Daozhong sect would be robbed one day. Just then, the leaves of a tree nearby ruffled as a sharp, high-pitched feminine voice came from within. A man who was clad in white, with long, wavy hair, was standing on top of his long sword. That handsome face coupled with his arrogant expression made him look like a top sword master, causing anyone who looked at him to feel ashamed of themselves. Lu Linfang. Looking at who it was, Lei Yifeng's expression changed, somewhat displeased. Well, these bandits seem to have quite a decent cultivation base. But they're still nothing much. Let me send them to the heavens with my sword then. Lu Linfang laughed coldly and sharply. With the flick of his finger, the long sword beneath his feet flew up into the skies, danced in a circle before sheathing itself back onto the scabbard on his back. His clothing was white as snow, and he landed without a single sound. Indeed, he gave off the very air of a pseudo-man. Lin Fan sized this guy up, nodding his head repeatedly. Not bad, he could train this man with a good lesson. Translator's thoughts. Lam. Hi guys, I have no idea why, but the Ras for Xing Yuyu was literally, stars, moon, rain. ROFL. Cheers. Chapter 211. Born in the Land of Women. Chapter 211. Born in the Land of Women. What an arrogant fella. Not only was he feminine in his demeanor, that action of flicking his finger was gentle and tender, sending off a girly aura. Lu Linfang was a disciple of Xuanjian sect. Now, the entire Xuanjian sect was made up of females, and he was the only male disciple within it. Growing up there since he was a boy, naturally, he was groomed accustomed to the mannerisms of women. Today, he wouldn't even leave the sect without rouge and makeup. Lu Linfang, why are you here? Lei Yifeng asked curtly, as though he wasn't too pleased with this person before him. Glancing at Lei Yifeng, Lu Linfang laughed, why not? Does this place belong to Daozhong sect? HMPH. Lei Yifeng snorted coldly. Lin Fan was quite displeased at this point. Come on now, he was holding a robbery here. Why were these people ignoring him? Could it be that people these days weren't even afraid of robberies anymore? Or were they implying that he did not have what it took to be a robber? Lin Fan coughed gently and stepped forward. Please pay attention, guys. This is robbery time. Please cooperate. How could people these days be so careless? Even standing right before a group of bandits and they could be chatting as though they had got nothing to fear. This left Lin Fan completely speechless. Especially Sha Dulong and the other bandits who had hideous and scary faces, one should already be scared witless just by looking at them. But now that this group of people were acting so nonchalantly, Lin Fan couldn't take it anymore. Hence, he had to give off gentle hints to remind these guys of the current situation. Furthermore, with the unique aura that Lu Linfang was giving off, Lin Fan had a good mind of giving him a good round of training. After all, there were few that he would take an interest in training up. The moment Lin Fan opened his mouth, Lu Linfang's sharp eyes frowned gently. Get lost. Killing you guys would dirty my sword. Just then, Lu Linfang's aura expanded rapidly. It emanated around him with a mixture of the yin and yang sword will. The forest seemed to have frozen still as well in the presence of his aura. Against this aura, Lei Yifeng and Xing Yueyu, along with the other Zongdao sect disciples, felt somewhat uncomfortable as well. The disciples were cursing within their hearts. Lu Linfang was doing this on purpose, repressing them down with his aura. Furthermore, the path of his cultivation was one of the strongest sword will in this world. None of their cultivation bases were as high as Lu Linfang's. Therefore, they could naturally not withstand this aura. Beads of sweat were dripping furiously from their forehead, but they could only grit their teeth and hang on. Taking a step forward, Lei Yifeng stood in between his juniors and Lu Linfang, as though he was blocking the aura for them. Don't go overboard, Lei Yifeng warned sternly. Lu Linfang glared at Lei Xinfang, then shrugged his shoulders. He then turned around to Lin Fan and the bandits. I'll give you guys 3 seconds. If you don't scram within this time, then you bear the consequences on your own. Lu Linfang stared at Lin Fan and the bandits as though they were mere ants. Lin Fan was about to explode by this point. He had not expected this man before him to act so imposingly with a repressing aura. Looking like a girl, Lin Fan could let that pass. But to think that he would give off such an arrogant aura. Insolent, watch how you're speaking to my honorable sir. Sha Yulong took out his saber and barked threateningly. How dare this man be so insolent in front of Lin Fan? He was just courting death. Even though Lin Fan himself did not say anything, as his underlings, they could not just sit still and let this pass by. Right at that moment, Sha Yulong felt his heart clench. It was as though an aura had locked itself onto his heart, and he froze as though he had fallen into the depths of hell. Annoying. Lu Linfang glanced from the side of his eye, dashing with his sword tip pointed towards Sha Yulong at light speed. Sha Yulong was frozen at this point by this. Even though he wanted to dodge, the sword was extremely fast like lightning, and it was as though his body was rooted to the ground and he couldn't move. This man struck without giving any warning just because he was displeased. Don't be brazen, Sha Yulong had thought that he was about to die. But at that very moment, the incoming force stopped. The sword was caught in between 2 fingers, stopping still in the air. That's good. Since you presented yourself here, then I'll rob you along with them. Lin Fan said casually. Even though this Lu Linfang wasn't weak, he still wasn't Lin Fan's match. What a pity. Lu Linfang was dumbfounded. He had not expected his sword to be stopped so easily, let alone by just 2 fingers. This. A sword flashed within Lu Linfang's pupils. He twisted his wrist, wanting to slice off Lin Fan's fingers. But no matter how much strength he exerted, his sword refused to budge. Lei Yifeng stood at one side silently, his heart thumping furiously within. He knew of Lu Linfang's strength. In fact, he may not even be a match for Lu Linfang. Even though he was an irksome guy, Lei Yifeng had to acknowledge his strength nevertheless. But now, this man before him could easily stop Lei Yifeng's sword, with just 2 fingers. This was terrifying. This difference in strength was like heaven and earth. Who was he? He couldn't just be any ordinary bandit now. You guys better wise up and get your sh*t together. Otherwise, I'll slice all of you up. Lin Fan flicked his finger onto the sword tip, sending a vibrating shockwave down into Lu Linfang's entire body. Lu Linfang stumbled back quickly, his face entirely stupefied. He couldn't believe what had just happened. Looking at these guys and their insolent behavior, Lin Fan understood one thing: he had been too kind. If he weren't fiercer, these guys might really take him for a pushover. Lin Fan took out his eternal axe and slammed it on the ground. A domineering aura was exerted onto the entire crowd. With Lin Fan's outburst, Lu Linfang started to shudder slightly. That farce he had put on to appear stronger seemed to be breaking down in front of Lin Fan, as his fragile heart took a double take. Senior's strength is extremely powerful. I'm sure you shouldn't be doing something like this, right? Lei Yifeng said cautiously. He was extremely alert now. This man's strength was beyond his expectations. What nonsense are you rambling on about? Men on the left, ladies on the right. Hold up both of your hands behind your heads and place all your valuables on the ground before you. Lin Fan's aura was exploding by this point. He gave off the perfect impression of a peerless bandit this world had never seen. Sha Yulong and the other bandits looked at Lin Fan, their looks of shock slowly turning into admiration and awe. This man was the bandit of all bandits. This was the real way one should be conducting a robbery. Thinking back at how they used to do it, man, they seemed like amateurs now compared to him. With just one single sentence, Lin Fan has managed to shock the entire place, leaving them with nothing to resist against him. Impressive indeed. Don't touch anywhere inappropriate. Lu Linfang's chest was huffing and puffing, somewhat indignant. Looking at this, Lei Yifeng headed up to restrain Lu Linfang. No one should lose their lives over a moment of impulse. Senior brother, Xing Yueyu stood alone at one corner, her face looking terrible as though she could cry at any moment. Everyone squat down, Lin Fan roared. Everyone squatted down immediately. Xing Yueyu's tears were brimming in her eyes. She had not expected things to turn out this way in the expedition. Before they had even done anything, they were robbed along the way. This was a terrible feeling. Looking at these once haughty disciples, the 14 sand bandits could not help but grin as well. Look at this. Disciples of a sect, squatting down helplessly. They had never seen such a scene for themselves. Get to work. Lin Fan flicked his robes, announcing the start of the confiscation exercise. Lin Fan looked like a ruler upon the masses, standing with hands behind his back while looking at these rows of squatting disciples. Chapter 212, Sinful and Mysterious Forest. Chapter 212, Sinful and Mysterious Forest. While the robbery was pretty fruitful for Lin Fan, it was quite a tragedy for the Daozhong sect disciples. Senior brother, those are all my life savings. A disciple cried out, tugging tightly onto his storage sack. That tragic face of his was heartbreaking, as though someone was snatching away every single thing he loved in this life. Lei Yifeng squatted there with a tormented look as well. As an inner sect disciple of Daozhong sect, encountering something like this while bringing his junior disciples out for an expedition made him feel pretty miserable as well. Looking at the pitiful looks of his junior brothers, Lei Yifeng consoled them gently. Junior brothers, let's just give in to their requests. It's fine. When we get back, your senior brother, me, will try to help you guys compensate for your losses. As a senior brother, he had an obligation to protect these guys from the dangers of the expedition. But due to his lack of strength, they were held at bay and robbed. As a senior brother, he felt a sense of responsibility towards this issue. As such, Lei Yifeng gritted his teeth and bore with everything. Once they returned to the sect, he would take out all his belongings from his own pockets to try to minimize the losses of his junior brothers. Upon hearing Lei Yifeng's words, all the junior brothers who were crying their hearts out had a streak of glee on their faces. Without any further hesitation, they took out all their storage sacks and handed them over obediently. Senior brother said that he would compensate them for it when they got back. That was a gift from the heavens. After all, would senior brother give them anything worthless as compensation? Looking at these disciples who had a change of heart and handed their belongings over nicely, the 14 sand bandits felt relieved as well. As a man, why are you carrying so much of this stuff? Sha Yulong exclaimed as he came across Lu Linfang. Bloody hell, as a man, what the hell was he doing carrying rouge, makeup, and all that girly sh*t? This was thoroughly shameful. Looking at the items taken from Lu Linfang, the disciples of Daozhong sect had to hold in their laughter to resist from bursting out loud, as they all looked at Lu Linfang with a weird look in their eyes. All of them knew that Lu Linfang had grown up under the care of Xuanjian sect. And they too knew that in Xuanjian sect, every single person within, even a mere cook, was female. And for Lu Linfang, who had resided in this place for his entire life, naturally, his habits were those of women as well. To change him was probably an impossible task. I can give you my storage ring. Could you leave this stuff behind? Lu Linfang raised his head while squatting on the ground, looking at Sha Yulong. Losing the storage ring was nothing much to Lu Linfang. To him, the rouge was the most important thing. After all, he had gathered a wide variety of flowers and plants before he could create this rouge. Just that fragrant scent itself was worth everything in the world to him. Furthermore, the Grand Master and other elders in the sect treated him really nicely, especially his own master. Even though she was strict to him, they were never stingy on him. He had always gotten all the best things. Thus, he was never lacking in any treasures during his life in Xuanjian sect. So, he could make do with the loss of treasures. Sha Yulong looked at Lu Linfang. This man had just tried to kill him moments earlier. But looking at the state he was in now, Sha Yulong no longer felt as pissed as he was. All this girly sh*t, you can have it back. A man using the stuff that only women use. Disgraceful. Sha Yulong looked at him in disdain and confiscated the other belongings without saying anything further. This was the best feeling ever for these 14 sand bandits. They had not expected that this day would come by. After they were done with everything, Lin Fan gathered all the belongings together. He intended to slowly go through them once they were at a quiet spot later on. You guys can leave now. Now that he was done with the robbery, there was nothing more to gain from keeping these people here any longer. Lei Yifeng stood up and beckoned towards his junior brothers to leave quickly. Even though this man had just robbed them, he had no killing intent towards them. To this, Lei Yifeng was very relieved. If this man were bent on killing them, these junior brothers he had brought with him would definitely stand no chance against someone like him. You, stay. As Lu Linfang prepared to leave along with Lei Yifeng and the others, Lin Fan called out. Lu Linfang was puzzled. Why can I not leave? I've given everything as you've told me to. Senior, this person here is a disciple of Xuanjian sect. Please do not make things difficult for him, Senior. Lei Yifeng stood in to plead. Unless all of you do not wish to leave. Lin Fan's expression grew stern. He did not wish to drag this on for too long. Lei Yifeng pondered for a moment before casting an apologetic look to Lu Linfang, indicating that this was the most he could have done. He could not possibly sacrifice the lives of his junior brothers here just for Lu Linfang. After Lei Yifeng and the others had left, Lu Linfang felt a little nervous. He had noticed that the man's gaze towards him did not bear goodwill. Growing up in the midst of women, Lu Linfang was naturally gentler in his demeanor. But once he was out, he had to put on a strong front, or he'd be taken as a pushover. Hence, Lu Linfang would normally give off a feeling of superiority, as though he was the best in this world. Lin Fan stepped forward, sizing up this man from top to toe. From time to time, he would let out an evil laugh as well. Not bad, not bad. Lu Linfang was the first person Lin Fan had met who could wield both yin and yang sword wills. As a man who was able to produce an aura of both yin and yang, that was interesting. By the looks of it, this guy could perhaps be one of the geniuses recorded in legends. Towards talented people, Lin Fan had always maintained the same approach. Those he could recruit, he would recruit. Those he couldn't, he'd train them up well. Follow me. Lin Fan grinned and beckoned towards Lu Linfang. Lu Linfang swallowed his saliva in a gulp. A look of worry flashed past his eyes. Just what was this man up to? No, he must definitely not follow this man in. Lu Linfang's senses were all ringing warning bells as a small little voice in his heart cautioned him, don't go, don't go. With a startled look, Lu Linfang flicked his finger and unsheathed his sword. He planned on riding his sword into the clouds to escape from this place. But before he could take off, his heel was held in place tightly by the other party's hands and pulled down back onto the ground. What's your hurry? I'm not after your life. Follow yours truly into that clearing in the woods. Lin Fan grinned sinisterly with a look of anticipation. No please. Lu Linfang tried desperately to grab onto the sand and the ground beneath him as he was dragged away. Horror spread across that tender face of his. But Lin Fan's grip on his heel was firm as he dragged this man with him towards the clearing. You guys wait here for me. Yours truly will be back in a bit. Lin Fan said to Sha Yulong and the other bandits. Yes, Sha Yulong and the rest of them were equally dumbstruck at this scene. Gradually, Lu Linfang's yelps grew softer and they both disappeared into the woods, silent. Big brother, do you think that, sir, he will? Sha Miashang asked, gulping down his saliva as well. That look of fear in his eyes was full of disbelief as well. Sha Yulong looked at his brothers in equal bewilderment. Probably not. Just then, a cold breeze blew past. Sha Yulong and the other bandits felt their anuses clenching up. Even though that man did seem pretty feminine, but Lin Fan should not have fetishes like that, right? For a long time, all of their gazes turned towards that sinful and mysterious forest, wondering what was going on within it. Chapter 213, Whip on Your Body, Pain in My Heart. Chapter 213, Whip on Your Body, Pain in My Heart. Senior brother, do you reckon that he'll be alright? Xing Yueyu asked apprehensively. She was still immersed in the mood of being robbed. This was the first time she had encountered something like this. Back in the sect, she was always protected by her senior brothers. But now that she was out on an expedition and encountered such a shocking affair, it was quite an experience for her. Indeed, just like the senior brothers had said, only when one was out of the sect could they experience a different sort of life. They were right. He should be, Lei Yifeng said, but frankly, he wasn't too sure of that himself as well. Even though Lu Linfang was somewhat irksome, the relationship of their sects was pretty fine. In the past, one of the ancestors of Daozhong sect had married one of the ancestors of Xuanjian sect. Even though thousands of years had passed since then, the two sects had maintained this harmonious friendship and relationship. Senior brother, look at that. Xing Yueyu pointed over to a big flag hanging majestically in the distance. Lei Yifeng raised his head and looked over. Far in the distance, above a mountain top was a flag blowing along with the winds. Lei Yifeng pondered for a moment, and he came to an exciting realization. Hurry, let's head over. That's the flag of Xuanjian sect. They would only plant that if they had set up camper base somewhere. Within the sinful and mysterious forest, a series of cries could be heard ringing from beyond. What are you doing? Let me go. Lu Linfang was deep in struggles. But by now, he realized how small he was in the face of all this. That death grip on his heel was unbreakable as the man continued to drag him into the deep parts of the forest. Looking at Lin Fan's imposing back view, Lu Linfang was only filled with fear. Coupled with the dead silence of the forest, everything seemed even more menacing. I am a disciple of Xuanjian sect. My master will not let you off. Lu Linfang was on the brink of tears. At this moment of despair, he was in regrets. Why did he choose to act so arrogantly earlier on? Couldn't he have just camped in silence within the trees? Why did he have to come out? Now that he was wrapped within all this, how was he to get out of it? Suddenly, Lin Fan came to a stop. Surveying the surroundings, he nodded in approval. Not bad, a quiet place it was. Pretty far from Sha Dulong and the rest as well. This way, nobody should hear any screams or shouts from here. Saint Devil sect was expanding smoothly. However, even though he had two talented geniuses, Mie Chongqi and Tian Yu, this was far from enough. Even though Lin Fan felt that Lu Linfang's strength was pretty low, what he was interested in was Lu Linfang's ability to wield the yin-yang sword will. Although this yin-yang sword will wasn't fabulous right now, Lin Fan knew that if this man were to continue cultivating it, he would be able to unleash an extremely powerful sword will by the time it had reached a certain stage. Greater celestial cultivation base, understanding the energy grid lines, controlling the energy grid lines. Within these grid lines existed yin-yang grid lines as well. If he could control such grid lines, then his powers would definitely not be that low either. Today, even if he had to be harsh about it, he would definitely train Lu Linfang. The moment Lu Linfang felt the grip on his heel loosen, he stumbled backward immediately, retreating as fast as possible. Don't come any closer. My master is nearby, Lu Linfang claimed frantically. Lin Fan looked at Lu Linfang with a calm expression, holding a black whip in his hands. Psssschch. The whip cracked as Lin Fan swung it on the ground, swinging up mud along with it. Not bad, this was a decent whip indeed. Ever since Lin Fan obtained the side profession of being a trainer, he always brought a whip wherever he went. Just in case. And the moment Lu Linfang caught sight of the whip, he was scared out of his wits. No, Lu Linfang did not want to think about anything anymore. Turning around, he broke into a run to escape. But with the flick of his wrist, Lin Fan's whip curled like a snake towards Lu Linfang's direction, coiling around him and pulling him back. Do not worry, yours truly does not seek your life. You must remember, this is all for your own good. Lin Fan said naturally. He then took out some leather straps and hung Lu Linfang up on a tree. What are you doing? Lu Linfang was extremely horrified. He was praying within his heart for salvation. Master, please come and save me. Lin Fan swung the whip a few times in his hands. Not bad, he was pretty used to the feeling of this whip by now. On his face revealed a big, wide smile. First, he had to adjust the level of shame. Perhaps he should start by hanging him bare. Psssschch. A loud crack of the whip rang through the air as the whip aimed for Lu Linfang's clothes, seemingly growing eyes of its own. The moment the whip touched Lu Linfang's clothes, they split apart on its own. Lin Fan was stunned. Other than the rouge that he was keeping within his clothes that fell off, something else was startling. Lu Linfang was wearing an undergarment. Furthermore, it was pink in color. Lin Fan was so stunned that he yelped in shock. Lin Fan took in a deep breath. Seemed like this time round, the target to train was not so easy after all. But he should have expected this from someone who could wield the yin-yang sword will. This person should have been far from ordinary to begin with. After continuous thinking and research, Lin Fan had come up with various ways of training someone. Since things had come to this, he might as well try some of them on Lu Linfang. Lin Fan's expression changed. That calm face of his turned extremely stern in an instant. When Lu Linfang met this gaze of Lin Fan, he felt a new chill shiver down his spine. From Lin Fan's eyes, he saw whips dancing within. What do you think about following yours truly from henceforth? Before he started the training, Lin Fan had to state the objective and theme first. This was for the other party to start preparing himself mentally. Finally, after a thorough training, he could then conform the other party to him. Impossible, Lu Linfang yelled. The moment Lu Linfang replied, Lin Fan grinned. This was the reply he was waiting for. Wild whips. Lin Fan was not a demented man, but for the sake of Saint Devil Sect's future, he could only resort to such techniques. No, just then, the air was only filled with the long whips dance. Whip after whip, they landed on Lu Linfang's body, leaving marks of unerasable shame. These deep red marks were deeply embedded in that snow-white skin of his. Lu Linfang was wailing sorrowfully. Even though every whip was inflicting a lot of pain on his body, there was also an unspeakable sense of shame encompassing his very body. Will you follow yours truly? Lin Fan asked again. No, Lu Linfang was sweating from head to toe. Those crystallized sweat dripped all over his snow-white body. Under the reflection of the glaring sun, he was sparkling like diamonds in the skies. At least such perfect skin did justice to all that rouge that he was always using. Alright then, ultimate hidden skill, air flower style whipping. Lin Fan was ready to unleash his ultimate ability. This was the strongest skill for him as a trainer. With this one move, heavens and earth would move, humans would cease to exist, and the world would no longer have any morals to speak of. Air flower style whipping consisted of merging 188 different moves into one. Back then on Mie Chongqi, he had only used 20. He would use 30 this time round on Lu Linfang. Hopefully, this man would able to bear it all. One whip to the anus. One whip to coil around his manhood. ... After God knew how long, Lin Fan let out a breath of relief, gently wiping the sweat away from his forehead. Will you follow yours truly? Yes. ... Looking at Lu Linfang who was curled up on the floor, Lin Fan walked forth helplessly and patted his head gently. Giving a long sigh, he continued, highs. While the whip touches your body, the pain is inflicted in the heart of yours truly. One day in the future, you will truly realize that this is all for your own sake. After more than 30 minutes of training, Lin Fan finally had this wild horse submitting to him. To Lin Fan, there was still much more that he needed to do to fully understand this side profession of being a trainer. Within the forest, a white figure appeared, floating like a ghost. Thief, how dare you harm my disciple? Just then, a soft yet sharp roar erupted beside Lin Fan's ears. Lin Fan raised his head and took a look. His face changed. The other party's fighting strength was way too high. FCK. Translator's thoughts. Lamb. Haha, don't worry guys, it's not you, I've never seen wild whips before. Should be some new skill that he invented out of thin air once again, haha. Cheers. Chapter 214, Where's the trust between humans? Chapter 214, Where's the trust between humans? Zhan Yongxian was furious. She had rushed over here immediately upon receiving the news from those Daozhong sect disciples, extremely worried. Lu Linfang was the son of her elder sister. Ever since that incident, her elder sister entrusted Lu Linfang to her. Even though she was young and did not know what had happened, all she understood till this day was that Lu Linfang was the only remaining bloodline of her sister. Ever since then, Zhan Yongxian had begged the Grand Master earnestly to allow her to keep Lu Linfang in the sect, bringing this boy up. But now that he was abducted, Zhan Yongxian was naturally enraged. Even more than anger, she was anxious about him. Thus, she rushed over immediately. Looking at Lu Linfang's current state, Zhan Yongxian was incensed. On that distressed face of hers was a strong killing intent. Take care of him. Zhan Yongxian ordered the disciples she had brought along with her and chased after the direction Lin Fan fled in. Lin Fan was utterly frustrated in his heart. Why the FCK was he so unlucky yet again? This woman, who was so impossibly beautiful, turned out to be so strong as well. They were on completely different levels. Lesser celestial full cultivation, goodness, even that strong body of his might not be able to withstand her blows. Lin Fan streaked immediately in the direction ahead of him, flying off. Now, once someone reached paracelestial cultivation base, they gained the ability to fly through the air. However, the woman who was chasing him was a lesser celestial full cultivation being. Comparing flying speed, would she lose out to him? But Lin Fan was grateful to himself for his hard work and effort in mastering his streaking skill, leveling it so high that his speed was even faster than that of someone flying. Zhan Yongxian chased tightly behind. Her face was huffed with anger as well, hardly able to believe that there was someone who could surpass her flying speed. Stop right there, Zhan Yongxian shouted fiercely. Sister there, I was just playing a prank. You don't have to get this serious. Lin Fan ran away while he lamented in despair. The one thing Lin Fan was most afraid of in this life was to be targeted by a woman. A woman was an illogical creature, unable to be comprehended. The moment she was displeased with oneself, she will pick a fight with you. But then again, a fight was nothing much. The worst thing was when she would decide to cling onto one until both the parties perished into the depths of hell. Hey, what have you done to my disciple? Zhan Yongxian roared angrily as her speed increased once more. She was so fast now that she was barely a specter in the forest. She could only remember the state she saw her disciple in, shirt torn in tatters, breathing weakly as though he had been through some sort of trauma. Nothing. I was just having a heart-to-heart talk with him. Lin Fan started streaking in a zigzag manner, forming an S shape. This crazy woman's speed was too damn fast. If he didn't run in a zigzag manner, he would definitely be caught by her. Arg! Zhan Yongxian roared angrily. Stretching out her hand, she sliced through the void and immersed herself within it, increasing her speed even more. As Lin Fan was frantically escaping, he snuck a peek behind. The moment he realized that Zhan Yongxian had entered the void and moved even faster as though she was teleporting, he exclaimed in shock as well. Hey, don't go overboard now. Any more and you'll be forcing my hand, okay. Lin Fan gritted his teeth and pushed himself even faster. Why did Lu Linfang not speak up for him earlier on? Did he fail to train that guy properly? But that couldn't be right either. The side profession of being a trainer could never possibly go wrong. Then, it must be because it was way too rushed. He must have dashed off before Lu Linfang could even get a chance to speak up for him. Alright then, show me your forced hand, then. Injuring my disciple, I'll make you pay today. Zhan Yongxian replied coldly, the killing intent even stronger in her voice. Lin Fan cried out sorrowfully. This was a tragic example of failing in the realm of being a trainer. He had turned the stubborn Lu Linfang into an obedient child. Not only was the parental adult figure not grateful towards him, she was on her way to kill him off. What sort of logic was this? Suddenly, Lin Fan felt an astral wind surging towards him from the back. In shock, he dodged without even turning back. Boom! The ground vibrated as a deep trench appeared where Lin Fan seconds ago. Bloody B*TCH. You for real? Lin Fan cried out in trepidation. HMPH. ... And just like that, both of them carried on this chase of cat and mouse. Lin Fan was like butter burning on a hot pan. How the hell was he to shake off this woman? If this were to carry on, he would definitely be caught by this woman. Even though he had trained this skill of escaping up till a pretty decent level, the difference in his cultivation base with this woman was still pretty significant. As such, the disparity in speed would only grow less with time. Just then, Lin Fan saw a patch of flaming grounds before him. He knew that he must be near the fiery hell by now. Gritting his teeth, Lin Fan dashed towards the direction of the flame. He had to take this gamble. Fiery hell was a forbidden ground after all. Therefore, there must be a certain degree of danger to it. Perhaps he could use this to his advantage to shake off that bitch. Sister, you've got a lovely face with sharp features. How is it that your temper does not match your appearance? We should have a peaceful talk to come to a resolution. Furthermore, I've got a pretty good relationship with your disciple. If you don't believe, you can head back and ask him yourself. Lin Fan shouted over. Alright, then you stop running and we can talk properly. Zhan Yongxian replied. Bloody hell, how was this guy so bloody fast on his feet? Even after she employed her secret technique, she still couldn't catch up to him. Furthermore, she knew that the fiery hell laid right ahead. There was no need to take on this additional risk for no reason at all. If this fellow were to run in and attract the beast, he'd spoil all of their plans. Alright then, we'll both keep the promise to talk it out. Lin Fan called out. Sure. ... As Lin Fan came to a halt, Zhan Yongxian followed suit. The both of them began to size each other up. I really didn't do anything to your disciple. You can check with him if you doubt my words. Lin Fan was still trying to catch his breath. This high-speed chase had left him pretty breathless. From the start of his journey out of the sect, he had not met with anything good. Tuodi Shrine aside, he was being hunted down for his life. Goodness, what sort of luck was this? On the flawless face of Zhan Yongxian was an authoritative look. The way she looked at others was as though she was a queen looking down at all her subjects in this world. But just at that moment, her eyes burned furiously. Her jade-smooth hands were filled with true energy as she channeled it towards Lin Fan's direction. As though I trust your bullshit. The moment Lin Fan saw this, his face grew pale as he dodged immediately once more. BTCH. You went back on your word. Goodness, what happened to the trust between humans? Lin Fan yelled angrily. What a despicable and sneaky B*TCH. Compared to a righteous man like him, where were her morals? By now, Lin Fan had arrived in the fiery hell's vicinity. What he was stepping on was no longer mud on the ground. The ground was charred black with cracks all around it and flames bursting from the cracks themselves. Ding! Eternal Demon Body Experience Points plus 100. Wow, to think that these flames that were shooting out from the ground could actually increase the experience points of his Eternal Demon Body. What a treat! But what left Lin Fan speechless was the fact that the shoes on his feet had instantly turned into ashes once he stepped into this place. When Lin Fan looked over at Zan Yongxian, he realized that she was walking comfortably on these burning grounds. She had covered her feet with true energy like a barrier protecting them against the fiery flames. Fiery hell looked just like a scene from an apocalypse. The entire place was charred black and looked absolutely desolate and deathly. The entire place was blazing with flames dancing around the cracks and gigantic sharp rocks protruded from all around the ground as well. A lava river in the center of the place divided fiery hell into two. At the same time, Lin Fan saw some beasts with fire blazing over their entire bodies strolling casually in these charred lands. Suddenly, the whole place shook. Zan Yongxian, who was chasing after Lin Fan all the way, came to a stop, her expression changing. She tried to turn around to leave, but it was too late. At the boundaries of fiery hell shot out a fire wall, surrounding the entire fiery hell and separating it from the outside world. Just then, Lin Fan realized that Zan Yongxian no longer bothered about him. Instead, she was flying off somewhat hurriedly into the distance. What's happening? Lin Fan shook his head, confused. He did not understand why the B*TCH who was bent on taking his life moments earlier was now disregarding him entirely. Could it be that his imposing aura had scared her off? But when Lin Fan looked around him, his face changed as well. FCK, SH*T just got flamin' real. Translator's thoughts. Lam. Hi guys. The incident which Zan Yongxian was referring to when she was thinking about Lu Linfeng and her elder sister was not clarified in the RAS as well. I suppose this part of the story would be revealed later on. And wow, the map does come across like a Dota map or something except that it's round instead of square in my imagination. I wanted to put flame wall but firewall has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Ha ha ha, cheers. Chapter 215, Ancient Beast. Chapter 215, Ancient Beast. The flames which shot up from the boundary surged up to form an impenetrable firewall, tearing away at the ground as well, caging fiery hell like a tsunami. Lin Fan raised his head to look at the skies, and saw that there was no way out anymore. The once clear skies were also encompassed by this fiery cage, as the heat waves slammed onto them like the tides crashing onto shores. Lin Fan's face was extremely shocked. This was like being inside a bloody volcano. At the same time, he finally understood why the B*TCH Zan Yongxian had gone to hide herself nervously. Stinky B*TCHES. How could she not inform him after realizing what the situation was? Did she just want to watch yours truly melt in these flames? Lin Fan surveyed his surroundings, trying to look for a place where he could seek cover. Even though fiery hell was a forbidden ground, some disciples came here to train up. If that were the case, then there should be places to hide and tide this through. Otherwise, if something like this were to happen to them from time to time, who could survive this *T? Lin Fan leapt rapidly forward towards the center of it all. His eyes focused, determined to find a suitable hiding spot. However, none of the beasts who were covered in flames seemed to be worried at all. They were all raising their heads towards the skies and howling, as though they were welcoming something. The moment these beasts caught sight of Lin Fan, they pounced towards him furiously, their eyes gleaming with bloodlust. Head aside, yours truly has no time to play with you guys. Lin Fan did not know if his eternal demon body could handle the attacks of these things. Even though the flames were bright red, some mysterious black flames were flowing within a few of them. Lin Fan did not dare to risk his body with this unknown flame. If he could not withstand it, wouldn't his death be too tragic and helpless? The moment one of the beasts reached him and attacked, Lin Fan waved his hands and desecrated it immediately. Ding, congratulations on defeating Precelestial upper-level beast. ... These beasts did not have a high cultivation base and were of not much use to Lin Fan's experience. Thus, he did not pay them much heed as he hurried to the center of fiery hell. Lin Fan's eyes gleamed as he caught sight of a cave on a wall. At lightning speed, Lin Fan sped and entered it immediately. The cave extended upwards, as though it was created for the sole purpose of dodging this fiery torrent that was happening. ... The 14 sand bandits had been faithfully awaiting the return of their honorable sir. But no matter how long they awaited, there was no trace of sound coming out from within the forest. Just when they were about to use their imagination to imagine what was happening, the ground beneath them vibrated violently. Sha Yulong and the bandits looked in the distance with an astonished look. The skies were flushed red from the flames, and a heat wave passed by them. Everyone was stunned, wondering just what had happened. At Xuanjian sect's campsite, Lu Linfang had long been retrieved back. He didn't suffer much bodily harm, just that his mind seemed to be in a daze. It was as though he had tons of stuff he needed to come to terms with. Just then, the skies changed color and fiery hell vibrated, attracting the attention of Xuanjian sect. What's happening over there? Why's senior sister not back yet? One of the higher-ranking disciples of Xuanjian sect asked with an apprehensive look. Just then, a slightly older woman walked out of the campsite. Looking at the skies which seemed to be burning, she frowned. You guys come with me. The rest of you, guard the campsite. Immediately afterward, she flew into the skies, leaving a rainbow behind her towards fiery hell. Lin Fan camped within the cave, patiently waiting for the fire torrent to pass by. This place was deserving of being called a forbidden ground. Giving such surprises from time to time, impressive indeed. Out of the 7 locations in the 7 Saints treasure map, the first was already so imposing. He wondered what the rest would be like. Lin Fan decided that he would hide a little longer even after this fire torrent had passed. That B*TCH was way too vicious, she would probably not rest till he was dead. The cave started to heat up as the temperature rose rapidly. Lin Fan wondered what the rocks of this place were made up of. Even after he pushed his finger at them, he didn't even leave a single scratch. Even though he did not exert his full strength, had it been any normal rock, it would have turned into dust with his push. A forbidden ground was a forbidden ground indeed. Even the rocks here were so high class. Just then, a red light appeared at the entrance of the cave. A series of hot air rose up, as though it was trying to penetrate into the cave. But, the red light disappeared instantaneously as quickly as it came. November LBJNN. Lin Fan waited for a long time, wondering what was happening outside. The flames that rose up at the boundaries was simply way too majestic. Suddenly, a loud cry pierced into the skies, bringing with it boundless authority. This was the cry of a wild beast. And this cry was so strong that it seemed to pierce through one's heart, bringing shivers into it. Lin Fan moved down along the tunnel sneakily, hoping to catch a glimpse of what sort of beast it was to give off such an imposing presence. Approaching the entrance of the cave carefully, Lin Fan took a quick peek at his surroundings. When he found out that the crazy B*TCH wasn't around, he let out a sigh of relief. But when he saw what was ahead of him, he was dumbstruck. From within the lava river which divided the fiery hell into 2 rose a bird-like beast spreading its wings. Head of a goose, bum of a kiln, neck of a snake, tail of a fish, scales of a dragon, ... This was a phoenix. Lin Fan stared in bewilderment. During his life on Earth, he naturally had some knowledge of these auspicious creatures. But he had never ever seen one in real life. Those spread-out wings were broad and glorious, extremely breathtaking. The 4 tails of the phoenix were burning with a boundless flame on each of them. Lin Fan gulped. This was the bird-like creature Sha Yulong was talking about. To think that it had taken residence within the fiery hell. Just by looking at it, Lin Fan had lost all will of resistance. Just by the sheer size alone, the beast had him intimidated. That imposing aura of it sent down waves of authority, shaking the hearts of anyone present. Who would even think of anything more? A group of people stood on a peak some distance away. Looking at the scene unfolding within the fiery hell, they were all pretty shaken up. How could an ancient beast still exist? A phoenix who had been through nirvana 4 times. An unkillable and indestructible ancient beast. The group of people from Xuanjian sect stared at this, chills shivering down their spines. They came to look for an item in the fiery hell, but they had not expected to see an ancient beast present. Furthermore, it was a phoenix who had been through nirvana 4 times. The phoenix was one of the ancient beasts. From birth, it had been through nirvana once, thus the formation of its tail. Each time it went through nirvana, it would grow 1 more tail. And the phoenix before their very eyes had 4. At that moment, the skies changed. A force seemingly able to break through the heavens encompassed the entire fiery hell. From the skies, a black vortex appeared. Within the vortex, a whip with a golden glow swung out. Feeling this repressive aura, everyone's faces could not be more terrible. Against it, all of them had the intention of cowering down in their hearts. Who was this? Was this person going to try to capture and tame the ancient beast? Lin Fan was looking at everything with his jaw agape as well. Everything, every single thing just seemed to be getting way more outrageous. Translator's thoughts. Lamb lamb. Hi guys. The Kilin is an ancient mythological beast in Chinese history. You guys can Google it up for the image. Cheers. Chapter 216. Yet another breakout act. Chapter 216. Yet another breakout act. The golden whip glimmered brightly, covering the entire sky in its golden shade. Like an agile snake, it coiled around repeatedly in the skies. The four-tailed phoenix cried out, shaking the heaven and earth, and filling them completely with flames. Lin Fan retreated slightly in shock. This whip was so darn strong. How could anyone survive from that? Lin Fan looked towards the black vortex. It was as though there was a divine being housed within it, looking at all of this with cold eyes. And that domineering whip was the representation of that divine being. Single quote question mark single quote. His cultivation base was only represented by question marks. This must mean that he had transcended beyond greater celestial. This was the first time Lin Fan had encountered anyone like this. The thought of this made Lin Fan shudder. If he had come to fiery hell brashly like he intended to, encountering this phoenix and acting out all his bullshit as always, wouldn't he be dead meat if this divine being had appeared just like this? The battle between the whip and the phoenix was extremely fierce as their aura exploded everywhere. Lin Fan felt as though he was caught within a tornado, and he could be ripped apart at any moment. The Xuanjian sect disciples on the peak nearby retreated immediately, extremely shocked as well. Even just standing there felt way too dangerous, as the pulsing shockwaves made their hearts throb. What about senior Sister Zan? One of the disciples asked. This situation is no longer within our control. Lin Fan retreated hastily. This four-tailed phoenix was simply way too strong, as though it could single-handedly manipulate the power of all the flames within fiery hell. All of the beasts stood where they were, howling into the skies without any fear. But suddenly, all these beasts exploded into dust by a sudden shockwave. Seeing this, Lin Fan was shocked out of his wits. This person was simply way too terrifying. He could destroy them without even moving a single bit. At the same time, Lin Fan caught sight of the B*TCH who had tried to kill him. But now that things were like this, who was in the mood to bother about what had happened earlier? Leave now, it's too dangerous, Lin Fan shouted over. When Zan Yongxian looked at what happened to the beasts, she was in a momentary state of shock as well. However, upon seeing Lin Fan, she calmed down. Once more, she was agitated and angered, wanting revenge on this man who had harmed her disciple. But just as she was about to strike at him, something unexpected happened. The four-tailed phoenix's battle with the whip had reached its climax. The phoenix flapped its flaming wings furiously as the entire fiery hell shook violently. It was similar to what happened earlier, but way more intense. One by one, flames shot out from the ground, forming fire tornadoes of their own. The number of fire tornadoes increased over time, threatening to burn over the entire fiery hell. Eventually, Zan Yongxian gritted her teeth and continued to look for somewhere else to hide. Lin Fan was following behind Zan Yongxian. Suddenly, a fire tornado shot out from beneath his feet, scaring the guts out of him. But at that moment, Lin Fan's expression changed. Ding! Eternal Demon Body Experience Points plus 100. Lin Fan stood around in bemusement. Phew, nothing happened to him. Even though his clothes were burning, his physical body had no damage or anything to it. In fact, he even gained some experience points. By now, the flames were like a tsunami of fire, threatening to swallow the entire fiery hell. Here, there's a cave here, Lin Fan shouted over to Zan Yongxian, who was busy looking for a hiding spot. Upon hearing Lin Fan's call, Zan Yongxian turned around. Glancing at Lin Fan once, she then proceeded into the cave. Why aren't you coming in? Zan Yongxian realized that Lin Fan was standing outside the cave without budging an inch and hurried him. Just then, Lin Fan gave off a resigned laugh. The cave only fits one. Zan Yongxian's face changed upon realizing this fact. Looking at Lin Fan in disbelief, she could not believe that this man would. You, Lin Fan looked at Zan Yongxian with a smile on his face. To be able to pass on the hope of living to a beauty like you is an honor of mine. Ever since I first caught sight of you, I was captivated by your grace. I hope that you do not forget about me ever. Zan Yongxian wanted to reply, but she was further interrupted by Lin Fan. Do not speak any further. To be able to just stare at you like this before I die is a lavish demand to the heavens. Farewell. Lin Fan lifted a rock from the side and proceeded to slowly seal up the cave. Just then, a burst of flame burned against his back, circling around Lin Fan's body. Lin Fan squeezed tears out of his eyes, showing an extremely pained look, as though he was struggling to move that rock to seal up the cave. Zhan Yongxian, who was hidden in the cave, did not say anything. She couldn't. Lin Fan's words and actions had stunned her speechless. By now, Lin Fan was prancing and leaping around the fiery hell casually. The clothes he was wearing had already long been burned to a crisp. Hee, yours truly is a genius indeed. Seems like my skills at picking up chicks had improved quite a bit. Seems like, in the near future, there would be yet another maiden in this world whose heart will be filled with the radiance of yours truly. The moment Lin Fan realized that these flames did not cause him any harm, a thought had already come to his mind. Even if he were to hide in the cave and tide this through, he would still need to run for his life after this was all over. If things were to go south, he might even get caught by the other party. Also, how could he miss out on this fantastic battle between the four-tailed phoenix and the whip? If any treasures were to drop from the phoenix's defeat and he were to pick them up, accidentally, wouldn't he be in for some big profits? Lin Fan was like a fish swimming in this pool of fire as he stared up at the skies. The battle between the phoenix and the whip was getting so heated up that the flames were burning white. But one could tell that the phoenix was no match for the whip, as it slowly lost its advantage over time. Just then, something shocking happened. The whip glowed golden once more, unleashing an ancient aura and coiling the phoenix within it. The whip repeatedly coiled without stopping, trapping the phoenix within it. The glow seemed to have some sort of restrictive properties, catching onto the phoenix tightly. Looking at this, Lin Fan was somewhat disappointed. Was the phoenix going down just like this? Yours truly was waiting for a situation where both parties would suffer greatly, and he'd just sneakily reap the rewards. He had already prepared his popcorn to watch this fantastic show, and this was it. But yet another unbelievable thing happened. From within the black vortex, stretched out a gigantic arm. Looking at this arm, Lin Fan no longer had words to describe this bullshit. Lightning was crackling at each of its fingertips as the gigantic hand itself was covered densely in runic symbols and runes. The speed at which the arm was moving was slow, as though something was holding it back. And the direction the arm was heading towards was the lava river. The trapped phoenix shrieked out loudly at the sight of this and struggled intensely to try to break free. It beat its gigantic wings furiously and dashed towards the vortex. Boom! Just then, a blinding light shot out from the vortex. The ground shook as though the skies were going to collapse at any moment. Lin Fan stood dumbfounded. He did not know what had just happened. The skies returned to its clear blue state. The vortex was gone, the phoenix was gone. Everything was gone, and silence returned to the earth. The lava river was the only thing flowing amidst this silence. Lin Fan was stunned for a while. Suddenly, his eyes gleamed. There must be something inside. Without thinking, Lin Fan dove headfirst into the lava river. Chapter 217, Living Forever in a Maiden's Heart. Chapter 217, Living Forever in a Maiden's Heart. The battle which had struck phobia into everyone's hearts had finally ended. One of the top 10 beasts, the phoenix's presence had disappeared entirely. The flames encompassing the entire fiery hell vanished instantly as well. A few rainbows streaked through the skies as a group of people landed. These were the disciples of Xuanjian sect. They had all witnessed the scene that had just happened. It was impossible for any of them to not be shocked by it. The appearance of a top 10 beast had already gotten them into disbelief, but the appearance of the vortex was even more shocking than that. The aura of that vortex did not feel like it belonged to Dongling continent, or any place in fact. It was way too strong. So strong that none of them could even feel like resisting against it. Zhan Yun frowned. Even though peace had returned to fiery hell, her heart had yet to subside. She was an elder of Xuanjian sect, and her cultivation base was of a greater celestial. Even though she was not the strongest in Dongling continent, her presence was never to be scoffed at either. But the pressure that came from the aura beforehand had even her feeling a sense of death within it. If she were the target of that black vortex, she probably wouldn't have lasted even a second. She had to head back and inform the other sects. This was the first time something like this had happened in Dongling continent. A mysterious power which did not belong within Dongling continent had appeared. And it appeared in fiery hell. Perhaps its objective was the ancient beast. And just then, from within the now silent fiery hell came a sound. Zhan Yun's expression grew alert as she looked around. But upon seeing who it was, she was filled with joy. Yongxian, are you all right? Zhan Yun hurried ahead. The other disciples revealed a wide smile of relief on their faces as well. They had thought that Yongxian might have perished here. Zan Yongxian's expression was stoned, as though she had just gone through a trauma. Those lost eyes of hers were frantically looking around, as though she had lost something. But gradually, she revealed a look of disappointment. It's all right, Zan Yongxian shook her head. The only thing on her mind was the last image she saw. That man's face, and his final words. When the flames surrounded that man, she felt her heart tighten. And when she witnessed the man using all his strength to seal up the cave for her, she felt a momentary suffocating feeling. She had never thought that she would experience this feeling in her entire life. Yongxian, it's good that you're all right. This place is too suspicious. Let's get out of here. Zan Yun realized that something was amiss with Yongxian and thought that the shock of the battle must have gotten to her. Not only Yongxian, even she herself was feeling the lingering fear of that battle. Zan Yongxian took a final look at the place, her heartstrings pulling at her. Eventually, she nodded. On that beautiful face of hers was a look of sorrow. Halfway down the mountain, the 14 sand bandits had been apprehended by Lei Yifeng and his disciples. When fiery hell was bustling, Lei Yifeng had headed in this direction. Bumping into the 14 sand bandits, Lei Yifeng naturally captured all of them since he was still burning with hatred for them. The 14 sand bandits were all squatting on the ground, hands covering their heads from behind, looking terrible. Now that they did not know where their new leader was, they were easily captured by these people. Looking at one another, perhaps this was truly their end now. What are you doing? Zan Yun, who was passing by, asked. Senior Zan, these people had robbed us. And their leader was the man who had harmed brother Lu Linfang. Lei Yifeng replied. Zan Yun looked at these 14 sand bandits and frowned. The nature of these men are impure and evil. Kill them then, so that they can no longer harm the masses. Yes, Lei Yifeng nodded his head. But just as he was about to strike, Zan Yongxian spoke up. Let them go. Her face was calm. Lei Yifeng stunned. This. Zan Yongxian did not reply. She snorted, expressing her displeasure. Lei Yifeng shuddered in fear. He then replied hurriedly, yes. But Lei Yifeng did not understand why Senior Zan had wanted him to release these guys. Your leader has passed away. You guys head on your own ways. Zan Yongxian told them. She could naturally tell of their impure natures. In fact, countless people must have died at their very hands. But since their leader had saved her, this was the least she could do. What? Sha Dulong let out a face of disbelief. But he could tell that the other party wasn't deceiving him. Eventually, he let out a sigh. Nodding to his fellow brothers, they left the area. Yongxian, what was that all about? Zan Yun asked, puzzled. Senior sister, I would have died in the fiery hell if not for their leader. Zan Yongxian replied quietly, but her eyes gave off a look of sorrow. Zan Yun looked at Yongxian and did not pursue the matter. Within the lava river, Lin Fan looked at these flames. Diving all the way down, he did not expect eternal demon body to be this strong. Was this what everyone meant by being immune to both heat and cold? As the heat brushed by his body, they could only be transmuted to small amounts of experience points. Even though it was little, this still seemed like a good place for gaining experience to Lin Fan. The idea of leveling up using the heaven and earth smelt had crossed Lin Fan's mind. But it was simply unbearable. The pain of it was equivalent to having to chop off his little manhood. If it were not a matter of life and death, he would choose not to experience that pain ever again. On the other hand, it was so comfortable within this lava river, as though he was in a hot spring. Lin Fan's physical body state was pretty darn strong by this point. A lava river like this was no problem for a greater celestial master as well, but that was only because they had boundless true energy within their bodies as support for it. Therefore, for a body like Lin Fan's to exist was simply incredibly rare. Just then, Lin Fan spotted a soft, red glow flashing intermittently at the bottom of the river, as though something was lying there. Lin Fan was excited immediately. Using all his strength, he dove towards it hurriedly. His objective to come to fiery hell was naturally to search for the treasure indicated within the Seven Saints treasure map. This fiery hell was so bloody huge and yet there was no indication of the exact location on the treasure map. He had expected to stay in this place for quite some time. But based on the actions of the gigantic arm just now, Lin Fan was sure that it was about to grab something within this river, just that it was stopped by the phoenix. By the looks of it, the treasure should be somewhere here. The deeper Lin Fan went, he found out that this river seemed to have been partitioned and divided by something. Losing his attention for a split second, he tumbled all the way down to the bottom. Raising his head, he realized that there was a glow of light above him preventing the river from flowing down. He could still see the flow of the river as though he was looking through a screen, but yet not a single drop of lava came down. Incredible. This was incredible indeed. Looking at his surroundings, this place seemed to be underground, and he could not feel any pressure from within. Looking at his bare A*S, Lin Fan took out a fresh set of clothing from his storage to put them on. He then headed forth to continue exploring this mysterious place. Translator's thoughts. Lam. Hi guys. Two things I would like to clarify. First is the fact that the Ras actually referred to the phoenix as a top 10 beast only in this chapter. There was no mention of this beforehand. So, I've got no idea if it meant that the phoenix is top 10 amongst all the beasts, or that there only exists 10 ancient beasts and the phoenix was one of them. I'll try to clarify on this fact as soon as the Ras indicate anything further to me. Also, I did not get the names wrongly, ha. There's two people here, one is Zan Yunxian, the other is Zan Yun. The pronunciations for their names are different in Mandarin, that's all, haha. Cheers. Chapter 218, Understanding the Firmament. Chapter 218, Understanding the Firmament. N-O-V-E in .c Om. To think that another world existed beneath the lava river, this was absolutely incredible. Who was the powerful being who could have created this place? Just then, Lin Fan's gaze stopped at something on the ground. The ground was filled with rocks, giving off a blood-red glow, occasionally letting off a peculiar aura. Treasure. This must be a treasure. Lin Fan leapt with joy. Since the time he was above the lava river itself, he had caught sight of this occasional red glow. To think that he would actually encounter a treasure. Ding, congratulations on discovering Nirvana rocks. Nirvana rock, a crystallized product of the Phoenix's fourth Nirvana cycle. Possesses boundless life force. Even though Lin Fan did not know what to make of this, he could tell from the description of it that it was a pretty high-quality item. Boundless life force. Anything to do with life force was definitely far from trash. Lin Fan did not say anything and began collecting these rocks. They existed in different sizes. The smallest one was only the size of his fingernails, while the larger ones were around the size of his fist. Even though Lin Fan did not know what they were exactly used for, he had an idea. There could only be two purposes for them, either for cultivating pills or weapons. As Lin Fan was collecting these rocks gleefully, he came to a stop upon discovering something else. On a ball of flame floated a single egg. It was the size of a basketball and pure white. Oh ho, this has gotta be big. The surprises came one after another, catching Lin Fan off his feet. After collecting all the rocks into his storage sack, Lin Fan hurried ahead and circled around the egg, observing it carefully. On this pure white egg, red glow in a vein-like imprint would appear from time to time. Could this be a phoenix's egg? Lin Fan mumbled to himself. Lin Fan suddenly recalled an old saying, where a phoenix exists, a precious treasure exists as well. If this was indeed a phoenix's egg, then he was definitely going to reap it big this time round. The descendant of any ancient beast was nothing to be scoffed at. But the descendant of a matured and long-existing ancient beast, that was an existence which could wipe away the very existence of sects. Looking at that phoenix from before, perhaps no one in Dongling continent could even be a match for it. Lin Fan stretched out his hands to touch this phoenix's egg. From within, he could feel the presence of a strong life force rumbling around. Ding, congratulations on discovering ancient beast phoenix's egg. Phoenix egg, the product of the ancient beast phoenix, will hatch after a month. The moment Lin Fan touched it, he let out a wide smile. It was a phoenix's egg like he had guessed. Not only that, it was about to hatch in a month. Lin Fan's heart could not stop rumbling. Once the phoenix hatched, wouldn't yours truly have a bloody strong sidekick for free? It was a greater celestial beast. And not just any beast, an ancient beast. If he could make use of it to give himself a good walloping, wouldn't he surpass a greater celestial in no time? Thinking about it, Lin Fan could not help but wipe his saliva from his mouth. Sitting down, he glared at the egg. From now on, he was heading nowhere. He was going to sit his ass right here and watch until it hatched. This was an opportunity of a lifetime. Lin Fan did not have the balls to let the egg just sit here while he went around seeking out other treasures. If someone came around to steal the egg after he left, wouldn't he cry himself to death? And just like that, Lin Fan sat down cross-legged and watched it quietly. Minute by minute, the days passed by. After 3 days, the boredom was starting to get to Lin Fan. From Lei Yifeng's storage sack, he retrieved some provisions to fill his tummy. If he were to stay like this for an entire month, wouldn't he go nuts? He needed to find something to occupy his time with. Lin Fan took out the eternal axe. Ever since he had obtained this axe, he hadn't examined it properly. Since he was so bored now, he might as well take a good look at it. Glowing gently from time to time, the eternal axe gave off a mild ancient aura. Lin Fan rubbed his eyes. Had he just seen something? When the eternal axe glowed gently just now, he seemed to have caught sight of an image. But when Lin Fan picked it up and felt it with his hands, it was thoroughly smooth, without any dents or scratches. Was he mistaken? Puzzled, Lin Fan held up the axe and stared at it with focus. Just then, the axe glowed again. This time round, Lin Fan had seen it clearly. The moment it glowed, an image did appear on the axe. And it lasted for a second at max. Staying underneath this lava river, Lin Fan no longer had any concept of time from the outside world. Other than waiting for the phoenix egg to hatch, all of Lin Fan's attention was on the eternal axe. One fine day, Lin Fan finally stood up. The only thing on his mind was the image imprinted on the eternal axe. The image showed a gigantic man bare naked, holding an axe in one of his arms. Opening his eyes, he cleaved gently towards the thin air in front of him. But that gentle motion ripped apart the void and tore out a torrent within it. Lin Fan closed his eyes, gently feeling the aura from the eternal axe. It was an aura so ancient, so distant. Lin Fan's forearms trembled as the eternal axe let out a bright glow. Bam! Lin Fan felt like the gigantic man within the image, possessing the power of the heaven and earth, ripping through the thin air. Boom! In a split second, a black void appeared before Lin Fan as though space-time was ripped apart. It was like a wormhole with countless currents flowing towards it, rumbling with energy within it. Whoosh! Lin Fan opened his eyes, startled and shocked, evidently tired as well. That one single strike had used up half of his true energy. What frightening strength! The true energy that Lin Fan possessed could be comparable to a gigantic ocean. Even though he was only at the paracelestial level, the capacity of true energy could be said to be even higher than masters of a lesser celestial cultivation base. And just this one strike alone had expended half of it. Incredible. Ding! Congratulations on comprehending heaven-splitting 3 axes first stance, the firmament. Firmament. Level 1 foot. ... Lin Fan breathed heavily, feeling somewhat helpless at this development. To think that just level 1 was enough to expend half of his true energy. If he were to continue leveling it up, wouldn't it suck him dry? After Lin Fan recovered his true energy, he gave it another shot and immersed himself within the power of the axe once more. He was starting to connect with the ancient aura flowing within the eternal axe. Firmament. Lin Fan's concentration was at his peak. In an instant, he swung down the axe, concentrating all his energy on it. Once again, a rip appeared in space-time. Strong. Compared to Nirvana Finger, this swing of the axe was way stronger, and the destructive power was way higher. Lin Fan held up the axe and thought things through once more. The reason why there was only one stance of the heaven-splitting 3 axes for now was probably because the eternal axe was damaged. Perhaps, he could only discover the next 2 stances after he had repaired the eternal axe. But Lin Fan was not hurried about it. From the looks of it, just this one stance alone was fearsome and domineering enough. If he didn't have this chance to sit down and contemplate through things at a place like this, he might not have discovered that the eternal axe was carrying such a secret behind it. Seemed like yours truly was indeed a blessed and lucky man. Only someone like him could have discovered a nuance like this. Crack! Just then, a crisp sound crackled. Lin Fan leapt with joy and turned around. It's coming out. Chapter 219, Fighting Cock of a Phoenix. Chapter 219, Fighting Cock of a Phoenix. A brand new life was hatching before Lin Fan's very eyes. On that pure, white egg, intricate cracks appeared one after another. Suddenly, a red glow appeared abruptly. Lin Fan widened his eyes while looking at the egg. His heart was like a raging storm. The ancient beast from the legends was about to be born. A tweet rang out from within the egg, so sharp, crisp and clear. Suddenly, a red beam shot out from the top of the egg. From there, a crack appeared and 2 wings spread out. After those majestic wings came out, it stretched out its 3-fingered claws. It raised its head gloriously, an exemplary representation of the majestic beast it was which had hatched from this egg. The featherless phoenix, which was the size of an adult rooster, cried a few times into the skies and retracted its wings. It then hopped down onto the platform, pecking at the eggshell with its sharp beak. Up and down, it pecked at a rapid speed, like a pile driver. Soon, the very egg which it had hatched from disappeared entirely. Lin Fan stood there, his heart thumping furiously. What the FCK? This was all that yours truly had been camping a month for. Thinking back at that mysterious and tough phoenix, he took yet another look at this unassuming little chick. This wasn't the image he had imagined in his mind. These two shouldn't be the same living being, right? The chicken stood perched on the platform and stared at Lin Fan eye to eye. Lin Fan was strongly resisting the urge to break down. This was not what he had expected. Meanwhile, the chicken tilted its head and looked at Lin Fan with its large eyes, revealing an extremely puzzled look. Why did this living thing before it look so different from itself? Lin Fan stretched out his finger. He had to interrogate this chicken. Just what the hell was this? But suddenly, the eyes of the chicken flipped white. Falling headfirst, it landed on the ground, both feet raised high in the air. Stretching out its little pink tongue, it didn't move anymore after that. It seemed to have died. Lin Fan's face turned pale as a sheet. He reached out immediately, shaking the chicken furiously. What the hell? Lin Fan could feel the life force of this newly born phoenix rapidly diminishing. Bloody hell, wasn't a phoenix supposed to be a beast with boundless life force? Even a 10,000-year-old tortoise wouldn't be able to compete with its lifespan. Why the hell was it dying the moment it was born? Oi, chicken, don't FCK with me. Yours truly has camped here for an entire month for you, and the moment you're out, you're going back. Aren't you way too heartless? Lin Fan was starting to panic. Just what was happening here? Was there something wrong with the hatching process? Or could it be that this phoenix was blatantly playing around, thus leading to this pregnancy? Had the genes been mixed with some other random breed that caused the birth of this deformed freak creature? The more the life force of the chicken died out, the more Lin Fan flustered. If this kept on, it was surely dead. Life force. Lin Fan recalled the Nirvana rocks. Weren't those filled with life force? Without hesitation, Lin Fan took out all the Nirvana rocks he had collected. The moment these rocks came near the phoenix, they let out a red glow before transforming into a red glow like a river, flowing into the phoenix's body. It's working. Lin Fan could feel that the life force was no longer diminishing. In fact, it was slowly increasing. He then continued to place the rocks one by one beside the phoenix. Looking at the rocks flowing into the phoenix like a river, Lin Fan let out a sigh of relief. At least he had managed to resuscitate this phoenix. No matter what, even if it were a mixed deformed freak, it was still a descendant of an ancient beast. Lin Fan stretched out his hand and rubbed the body of the phoenix. Even though it was featherless, at least if it were to grow up, it would still be a good sidekick for sure. But the moment Lin Fan touched the chicken, this thing which was lifeless only moments before rose up immediately and pecked his palm. F***ck. Looking at the deep sunken hole on his palms, Lin Fan was filled with disbelief. His physical body state was that of a lesser celestial. To think that a single peck from this chicken would be this strong. While Lin Fan was still in a state of shock, the chicken rose up with a strutted chest. Even though it was featherless, it was still rather imposing as it stretched out its wings. Turning around, it suddenly broke into a run into the distance. That propped up backside of it was shaking left and right furiously as it made its escape. It was so energetic now, like a baby who had just breastfed some milk. Lin Fan broke out of his stupor and roared out angrily. Stop right there. Swift like lightning, he chased after the chicken. The chicken, which was furiously escaping, turned around and saw this weird monster chasing after it relentlessly. Clucking frantically, it sped up even more. Lesser celestial lower level. The moment Lin Fan looked at it, he was extremely astonished. To think that a freshly born chick would already have a lesser celestial cultivation base. Shocking. An ancient beast was an ancient beast indeed. It couldn't be compared to mere beasts. Normal beasts' offspring would usually only have a precelestial cultivation base. Thinking back to that one peck, if his body had not been this strong, he might have lost this hand entirely. The thought only served to enrage Lin Fan even more. After camping for you for an entire month and saving your life with the Nirvana rocks, you would turn against yours truly immediately. Darn it. Disobedient, aren't you? Fine then, yours truly will train you until you're obedient. Even though this chicken had just been hatched, Lin Fan was alright with it. After all, one had to teach a kid from a tender age. Otherwise, they would grow up to be a wreck. As the chicken continued on its hasty escape, it turned back from time to time to see if the weird monster was still chasing after it. But just then, the chicken caught sight of a whip chasing it furiously, as though it had eyes grown on it. It started crying out fearfully. Like an agile snake, the whip coiled itself around the chicken's claws. With a strong tug, the chicken fell onto the ground and was pulled back by Lin Fan. Lin Fan looked at the fearful chicken and let out an evil smile. From within his backpack, Lin Fan took out a barbecue grill and placed some mysterious ingredients beside it. The chicken, which was now tied to a nearby rock, looked at Lin Fan suspiciously, wondering what this mysterious creature was going to do to it. Lin Fan threw a side glare over at the chicken. The evil look in his eyes sent it into a panic frenzy. From his storage, he took out a domestic fowl. In front of the chicken, he cleaned the feathers off the fowl with a sharp knife easily, and eventually placed the fowl on the grill. He had prepared this fowl all the way from Nameless Peak. Naturally, he couldn't let himself suffer from low-quality food on this expedition. By the looks of it, the chicken did not seem to be a stupid creature as well. Lin Fan was sure that it could definitely understand his meaning. And he was right, because the chicken started crying out frantically. It had finally understood what this mysterious creature was up to. Walking towards the chicken, Lin Fan's smile was giving the chicken goosebumps. He then released the rope around it. The chicken, who had regained its freedom, did not dare to move. It just stood there stilly. Looking at the scared look on the chicken, Lin Fan smiled. "You'll be called Chicky from now on, get it?" Chicky didn't hesitate and just nodded its head frantically. Horrifying. This was way too horrifying. "And from now on, you'll only cry out like this." Lin Fan demonstrated for it. "Cuckoo. Cuckoo." Chicky nodded its head furiously once more, before raising its head and crying out, "Car. Coo." Lin Fan nodded his head in satisfaction. Even though it sounded a little off, he was sure that with time, it would sound the same. What was a phoenix in the face of all this? Lin Fan was determined to create a fighting cock out of a phoenix. But then again, he would have to train it up first, of course. Lin Fan did not believe that this chicken would submit to him so easily. Given its high intellect, he was sure that this chicken would understand the concept of shame as well. Looking at the evil look on the mysterious creature before it, Chicky trembled with its featherless body. Just then, a tragic cry called out. "Car, coo, coo." Translator's thoughts. Lamb lamb. Ha 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 ha, what the hell, please, this chapter. This novel never fails to crack me up. By the way, it is a phoenix, not a chicken. Lin Fan's the one who keeps calling it a chicken, ha ha ha. And if any of you gets confused here, friendly reminder that the snow lion was a descendant of an ancient beast, thus the cub that Kaiser Chow has is a descendant of an ancient beast. While this is the direct offspring of an ancient beast. Chapter 220, Sheep in Wolf's Clothing. Chapter 220, Sheep in Wolf's Clothing. After Lin Fan's love-filled whipping session, he had successfully tamed the chicken. From now on, he was going to hold an irreplaceable position in Chicky's heart. Even though Chicky looked kinda worse for wear right now, Lin Fan believed that it would not let him down. "Come here, Chicky." Lin Fan beckoned to the haggard Chicky. Chicky looked as though he had just been gangbanged by numerous ferocious male beasts. Struggling to stand up, it hobbled claw by claw over to Lin Fan. The side profession of being a trainer was strong. Indeed, no living being in this world could escape from being tamed by the trainer. So what if it was the descendant of an ancient beast? Under the loving whip, it was still tamed without a single bit of resistance. Lin Fan then barbecued the domestic fowl and rested for a bit after consuming it. After that, he continued exploring the place with Chicky perched on his shoulders. Chicky was only a surprise gift. The real treasure of the Seven Saints treasure map was yet to be found. The entire fiery hell was so big to begin with. Lin Fan wasn't even sure if the treasure indicated within the map was in this lava river. But compared to everything else in fiery hell, this lava river should be the most dangerous place of all. And based on the thinking of normal people, treasures would usually be hidden in the most dangerous spots. And just like that, the man and chicken duo continued walking beneath the lava river. This was really like another world. If not for the glow above from the lava river itself, he would have thought that this was the ground level. Just then, Lin Fan realized that his surroundings were starting to change. The charred black ground and walls were changing as they went further. A few ancient trees appeared before Lin Fan's eyes. Some birds were even perched on some of them. Roar! Just then, a wild beast leapt out from within the darkness. It roared at Lin Fan with a vicious look on its face, startling him. To think that there would even be beasts living in this place. Incredible indeed. Chicky, who was on Lin Fan's shoulders, leapt down and faced the beast, crying out with outstretched wings. Cuck cuck cuck. Even though the cry was weird, Chicky was the descendant of an ancient beast after all. Therefore, there was some sort of authority within its bloodline that made other beasts quiver in submission at its sight and presence. The beast's expression changed as it retreated slightly, as though ready to make a run for it. "Chicky, ask it if there's any weird place around here." Lin Fan was starting to get worried. After all, he had been exploring for quite a while with Chicky, but had yet to come across anything. Chicky's intellect was pretty high, so it could understand Lin Fan's words. It nodded its small little head and turned to the beast, cuck-coo-coo. Even though Lin Fan could not understand what Chicky was talking about, he supposed that this was just beast talk. Just then, Chicky flapped its wings repeatedly and with a single leap, jumped onto the beast's head. Chicky then called out to Lin Fan, as though implying for him to follow them. Lin Fan broke into a smile. Seemed like he was in luck. Lin Fan really had to give it to this fiery hell. It was so bloody big that searching for anything within it was just like searching for a needle in a haystack. He did not know if the place he was headed to now was the location indicated by the 7 Saints treasure map. Lin Fan just followed behind the beast all the way. He didn't not know how long he had walked for, but all he knew was that the scenery was changing all the way. By his estimation, he must have walked for 2 entire days at least. After God knew how long, the beast finally stopped. After exchanging a few more words with Chicky, it fled immediately. Lin Fan was puzzled. He did not know what the beast was talking about. But when he turned his gaze forward, he was stunned by the sight before him. This was the base of a waterfall before him. However, what flowed was not water, but the lava river as it gushed continuously down from above. Was this the weird place? By the looks of it, it didn't look too weird. What was so special about this? But just then, Chicky was alerted as it spread out its wings, crying out loudly at the waterfall. It was as if something was causing Chicky to be like this. Lin Fan focused his eyes and gazed at the waterfall. It seemed like there was a pair of eyes staring at them from within. Come back, Chicky. Lin Fan took out his eternal axe and stared at the waterfall cautiously. Roar! A roar erupted from within the waterfall like a shockwave, causing Lin Fan's clothes to flutter with the force. A gigantic paw appeared from within the waterfall, stretching out with its blood-red claws. Slamming down on the ground, it seemed to be stopping the flow of the waterfall. Lin Fan squinted. What a strong aura. At the same time, the beast was like a gargantuan rock. Just a single paw alone was like a small mountain of its own. Following the paw, a mammoth head stretched out from within the waterfall. It cut off the waterfall's flow entirely, as the lava now landed on its head, gently splashing about. That colossal head was filled with black scales, as raging fire burnt in both of its eyes. The moment it stretched out its head, it stared at Lin Fan and roared once more. The series of roars were like sharp blades, shaking Lin Fan non-stop. When its entire body was revealed, Lin Fan could not help but raise his head, stupefied. This was huge. The aura it gave off was repressively suffocating. Strong, really, strong. Lin Fan could feel it now. There must be some sort of treasure behind the waterfall. Why else would there be such a fearsome creature guarding this place? From just the aura alone, Lin Fan knew that this beast was definitely at least at greater celestial full cultivation. Lin Fan retreated a few steps back. He had no affinity with this treasure after all. This beast was not something he could deal with. That gigantic beast revealed a row of sharp teeth, growling at Lin Fan with murderous intent. But what Lin Fan could not get was why this beast had yet to strike against him. Why was it still biding its time by the waterfall for so long? N-O-V-E in .c ohm. Could it be that his cultivation base was too low to even attract this beast's attention? Lin Fan felt a strong sense of shame, as though he was being looked down at by this beast. Fine, I'll give it to you. I'll spare your miserable life this time round. Once yours truly gets stronger, I will come back here and take it away. Lin Fan pointed a middle finger at the beast, threatening it before he prepared to leave. Right before he left, he checked it out with the system. Lesser celestial lower level. Lin Fan rubbed his eyes. Could he have seen wrongly? How was it only at lesser celestial cultivation base? That aura that it erupted with was definitely one of a greater celestial full cultivation. Could it be that? The only thought that crossed Lin Fan's mind was that this beast was acting it out. It was just a sheep in wolf's clothing. Patting Chicky, Lin Fan smiled. Time to fuck it up. Cuckoo.